We've got match number 5 for you right now, and it is going to be New Zealand versus Portugal, the last on-stream match of the day, but there's still other matches going on that we've been updating you throughout the stream of some of the other matches that have been played off-stream, so it's one thing I do love about Swiss. So I'll just everyone just plays together, effectively, just going through the round by round, and then by the end you see how it looks, and then suddenly, right, next opponent, let's go. And that's what the next few weeks of Global Games are going to be.
Yeah, and it turns us into somewhat of an information hub, just trying to gather everything together and let you guys know what's going on. Of course, we try and keep you updated on the off-stream matchups as best as we can, but our on-stream encounter here is going to be between New Zealand and Portugal to round out the day. Yeah,
I'm looking forward to this. New Zealand's, I think, a favourite team, I would say, of a lot of viewers. You know, whether they're from New Zealand or not, I think it's just a team a lot of viewers have rooted for because we've got a few personalities on there that definitely shine through. For example, like Patra playing for them is a nice spokesperson for that region, and also just relatively large streamer as well. Something I know she has quite a lot of viewers and takes pride on being on the HGG team.
Yeah, and I think definitely last year she, perhaps although not like the leader in terms of plays, she was definitely the leader in terms of putting in research, gathering information, making sure that practices were scheduled and all that kind of thing. So yeah, and you see her in our intro video as well for this show. As you mentioned, she is a big community figure and spokesperson for that region.
Yeah, let's take a look at some of the other players as well. I know you have a nice appreciation of the player called Mage.
I do.
As well.
Also Jack Attack,
I was going to say, you were casting Jack Attack,
I was, yeah, and he was a player who really came out of nowhere. He qualified for that event. He said, I've never really played tournaments before. It'd be pretty funny to win the first tournament that I entered after I've qualified for it. Guess what? Yeah, it was. It was pretty funny. But that's the thing. Like, he sat down on the couch at the end for an interview with, I believe it was myself and Frodan that were casting the finals of that event. And we said, so, first off, I want to say to you, it's so impressive that you actually played really well as a newcomer to the scene. It's not like you just a randomer high rolled this tournament. You played extremely well to get to this point. They see the cinematic views of New Zealand, I think, is the right word to use, considering it is, in fact, the world's largest film set. Just about anything that you can think of has been filmed in New Zealand.
Yeah, I unfortunately have not had the chance to go to New Zealand yet, but I definitely want to at some point. I just believe it's a place like none other, right? And that's why it's used so much in some of these grand films. And we also see the lovely views of Portugal as well. And let's talk about Portugal a little bit as well, as we see how the picks and bans have shaped up after the players have got everything ready. But I know Lorinda was telling me that I believe Zuka for Portugal did not make it last year onto the team and was a bit disappointed. And this time he's the anchor. Yeah. You know what? I'll be on it this time. I'll just be the highest point earner in the country. And you know what? That's the kind of work ethic I appreciate.
Yeah, it's the right response to adversity to then turn around and make sure there's no way you're missing out this time. But the bans, Druid and Shaman, are two most popular bans for the first ban phase, I believe, so far. Shaman and Warlock being picked up, and then Paladin and Druid being picked up on the opposite side, which then allowed that big talking point for us, that Hunter deck, to be banned out in the second ban phase away from Portugal. And then the deck that was forced on each team at the end, which is the way to look at that last pick. It's not really a pick, it's like the last deck in your lineup that you're left with. Rogue for New Zealand and Mage for Portugal.
And something I'm very much excited to get to, and it'll probably be more next week and onwards. Okay. But it's something that happens in Swiss, whether it's a regular Swiss or not HGG format, but in general is win rates of classes. Because maybe this is just like a sort of tarred view based on what we've cast over the past couple of days, but I feel like the Mage picks may not be paying off for most teams. I feel like Mage has lost the most. Maybe that's just me making it up of what I think I remember, but I really can't wait to see, once round one is finished, what the win rates look like in terms of the picks. And also, as you mentioned, most banned at this stage, most picked at this stage. Yeah. All of this information gets very important the more you move through the tournament as well, for us and the players, as they're going to try and construct lineups that kind of beat what's the expected outcomes.
Yeah. But now we can see the order of play. Remember, one last time for the day, this is at maximum a 5-game series, but it could end after 3, meaning that Zuka, after fighting so hard to be able to make his HGG debut for Portugal, might not even end up getting to play, or at least to pilot, because of course, no matter which of these names are attached to the class, they'll be controlling the mouse, they'll be making the clicks, and in some cases, they'll have final say on the plays, but each member of every team is in communication with all the others, and they're talking through all the strats, all the lines, all the optimal outcomes together as a team.
Yeah, and we see both the starting players on the camera right now, and I will say for Dr. Boom as well, not a player we've talked too much about, but Dr. Boom is definitely, one, quite relevant for the next expansion, but two, he's definitely someone who is deep in the community, I would say. I feel like almost any stream I watch at any given time, he's just there all the time. He's talking as well as obviously interacting with the game that's being played on stream as well, but he's definitely ingrained, I would say, at least in the streamer community.
He's one up to you, right, as well. Like, you were happy that you got a competitive season named after you, or a rotation season named after you. He's had an entire expansion modeled after him. That's just one better, isn't it?
No, I still think I'm ahead. An expansion like just disappears after a while, doesn't it? Well, expansion lasts 2 years. Oh no, I'm digging myself home. Moving on, the game started. Thank you, everyone. I got a cool cinematic. Not that the Dr. Boom expansion isn't. I got the like Raven.
You're telling me that all of the cinematics they've released so far for Boomsday aren't cool?
I just said not that they are not great.
Are they not?
The Raven is the best one, obviously.
I disagree. Anyway, Rogue for New Zealand, Rogue for Portugal, but I do believe that I saw a pretty spicy card as I give Raven paper cuts right across his face. There was a Death Speaker thrown away from the opening hand from Pathra's Rogue there. And in fact, there are 2 copies of said Death Speaker in their Rogue deck.
You know what? I can see it. It makes sense. Death Speaker was a card that came up in Zoo a couple of metas ago, or maybe even more than a couple of metas ago right now. And it was a card I generally like because it does what you want, almost what old Zoo does, right? It's a minion that buffs another minion that allows you to gain board control and make value trades. That is what Zoo initially specialized in, and this is pretty close to, it's more aggressive, I would say, overall than traditional Zoo, but it's pretty close to a Zoo deck. You're relying on early minions, getting good trades mainly with the weapon as well, and removals such as Vile Spine, and then you just kill your opponent from nowhere.
Right.
It's pretty close.
Deckhand on 1 immediately, not a given. It's it can be a source of 2 damage, whether you play it on turn 1 or turn 3 or turn 5, because you're going to have a dagger up most of the time, so it'll have its source of charge damage. So it often comes out in the wash in terms of playing it on turn 1 or playing it on turn 3 after a dagger even, or turn 4 alongside another 3-drop, for example. But holding it in your hand, you can use it as a combo activator later in the game. So there's definitely some merit to holding on to it, but Pathra and New Zealand just chose to develop out on board, just get ahead of the game.
Yeah, and I think this hand needs to really shape up for New Zealand right now, because it's okay, but okay isn't good enough when you're looking at Fledgling, Tar Creeper, Deadly Poison, for example, as well. So it's a little bit better hand for Portugal overall. I will say that the Void Ripper, to a certain extent, negates the power or traditional power of the Tar Creeper. So it makes it dealable a little bit easier. But I do think that New Zealand do need to just get a couple of decent draws to keep up right now. Luckily, they are on the play, so it means that they can actually just get something on board that the Fledgling isn't going to just be played into.
But this Deadly Poison can end up coming in super clutch now for Portugal. Usage of the coin in odd and even decks is quite often very difficult, very awkward to find a good turn to use it. Because, you know, your curve often skips a turn in terms of, you know, what cards you're filling, right? It's not like you're going to coin out a 4-drop on turn 3, which is what you would do quite often with a regular deck if you're playing an odd deck, because you don't have any 4-drops in there. So using the coin just to throw out a 1-mana card on top of your 3-mana card is often your best route to victory, and I think that is what we're going to see here. Even though it's very minimal Deadly Poison value, it creates incredible vicious Fledgling value.
Yeah, I will say the one other time you see the coin is coining a 3-drop on 2 to then protect it with the weapon.
But even then with Odd Rogue, your dagger's so good that you quite often are happy just to dagger on.
Right, a lot of it's playing around AoE of you know, Henge Clan mainly.
But now, I want to rewind time all the way back to turn 1 and that South Sea deckhand that basically did nothing apart from deal 4 damage. It got played, it hit face, dagger killed it. That was basically what was going to happen to it every time. Now, no combo activator in hand for that SI7 agent means no way to deal with this Flappy Bird. Means, well, that's actually just unlucky, isn't it?
means
means never punish.
What I will say though, even remove combo activators, the deckhand plus weapon swing would have just killed the fledgling anyway,
True.
right? So, you know, there's even that. And think about Hench Clan. It would kill a Hench Clan as well. And maybe it's just a bit of eagerness of saying, I can't play a deck as aggressive as Odd Rogue and not play a 1-drop on 1 if I have it.
Don't like it, Raven. Not
Oh,
a
I
fan.
never said you had to like it. I'm just trying to get in the heads of the players, right? You know?
Okay. Tar Creeper is still an opportunity, though, for Portugal. Even though they whiffed on the Wind Fury, they whiffed on the Stealth, they were still able to now protect this behind the Tar Creeper. And that is now Peru going up on a 2-0 lead against Denmark. Of course, without it being part of my predictions or anything, I do have a soft spot for Denmark because we're good friends with the Hoy twins, and of course I've got Crane to root for there on my Complexity teammate. So that one not working out too well for me just yet, but plenty of time, plenty of gas in the tank. I still have faith.
Also Pidgey.
Also, yeah, Pidgey's
Of course.
Yeah.
I don't know what the Hoy twins would be without Pidgey, to be completely honest. I think that's where the source of their power comes from. There is no green skin available just as kind of a flat drop. The weapon is active. It's not quite as powerful because there's only one charge there. So you don't have the full gain from green skin, but there's not really a lot of options right now. Do you just have to save SI for that turn just to get 2 damage from 2 of them?
Maybe.
This is what I was saying. Like, the hand has just not been good for New Zealand this whole game compared to the relative power of Portugal's hand.
It's been all right. It's just they had a deckhand in their hand that they don't have anymore that kind of solved a lot of problems.
Yeah. Not arguing with that.
Okay.
Too soon.
Now this Fungal Mancer is going to make magic happen.
Ooh. Do you now divert away from that path?
No.
Okay.
Next question.
Well, it's just like there's still a chance now that the green skin just kills the bird, right?
There's also the chance that that happens.
Okay.
Followed by that.
Oh. Next game.
GG.
Oh, look at Dr. Boom, just like...
Dr. Boom laughing like the maniacal scientist that he is.
I give up.
And we've got to be honest, you know, Portugal don't go to a 1-0 victory. A nice pat on the flag there from Dr. Boom.
Is that a thing? Pat the flag?
It is now.
Okay.
It is in Portugal.
Sure.
How do we know?
Sorry,
But,
I didn't mean to disrespect the Portuguese national tradition of patting your flag.
Of course. Don't start with me. I will say, though, the bird won the game. The deckhand could have stopped that.
Yeah, did the bird win the game or did the deckhand lose the game?
Right, exactly. And it's hard to get away from... That's literally the analysis for that game, isn't it? You know, normally there's multiple routes, multiple parts in any given game, multiple turns where you can make choices that impact the game. But there, like you said, if the deckhand did some damage, great. And I get the mindset of, well, it's aggro versus aggro. I want the first minion on the board, right? Logic dictates that makes sense. But if the Flappy Bird dies, then well, that game just actually goes on for more than 3 turns. So maybe they need to just slow down a little bit for New Zealand here and just consider more options and more potential issues because they didn't even have a strong 3-drop, right? They didn't have a Hench Clan, they didn't have Flappy Bird. They
just had SI, yeah.
Right, so they didn't even say, well, if they play a strong 3-drop, then we've already played ours, so that there's an outcome there, but they didn't do it. So that was one game that went by very, very quickly, as Odd Rogue mirrors can do in some instances, but maybe they just need to slow down just a little bit.
Yeah, now things start to get a bit thematic as we have Mage on the Mage versus Lazy A on the Lazy A. No, on the Paladin.
I was going to say, like, wait, where can you possibly go
I tried.
with that?
I gave myself like 3 seconds to find something and just wasn't there.
You just set yourself up for failure. You take a leaf out of my book on that one.
That's true enough. But yeah, Mage versus Paladin. New Zealand's Mage is the control mage. It's not the aggro mage that we have seen a couple of people on at least one occasion have to run directly into Paladin, much to their disappointment. The control mage, much stronger matchup, and now suddenly a very interesting matchup to me after what we saw yesterday with the super aggressive victory for the odd Paladin with 0 hero powers being pressed before achieving lethal on, I believe, turn 8.
Right. Let's talk about deck lists.
Go on.
You'll be
Why are you hiding it from me?
You'll be a fan of Portugal, as they
Okay.
have your boy, the Boisterous Bard.
The boisterous bard.
Yes, they have only one.
Okay.
But a lot of the time, one can be enough if that just holds the board for that one extra turn you need it to land above.
Yeah, what I will say is that Control Mage isn't really the matchup for it.
Right.
Because Boisterous Bard generally does two things. It raises 1 health to 2, and it raises 3 health to 4. None of that matters against Mage. You know, 4 is the minimum you're going to get AoE'd for, right? It's Blizzard is a stalling technique anyway. It's not like a big AoE that's going to wipe your board. Flame Strike deals 4. Dragon's Fury at its lowest deals 4. So being able to buff your level up board even to a bunch of 3/4s does not end up being relevant in the matchup. So I think it's actually kind of a whiff to have that card in your deck against Control Mage.
Right, I do think as well, this is something that we may see going forward in the way the teams choose to build their decks. We saw this in the last series that Falcone and Lorinda just cast, where Harrison was in the Warrior, which is not a common choice,
Sure.
yet it took the Twig out, is one card that helps out in certain matchups quite a lot, just good enough to put in a deck. You know, that's something you have to consider, because if the Twig wasn't removed in that last game, well, that game does change. The damage is there to kill them through armor, just like Boisterous Bard. Well, yes, it's not going to be fantastic in this matchup, but in the mirror, for example, then suddenly that's huge, even as just a one-off. That one turn you play it, where you are now at an advantage in the mirror, and in some of the other matchups you mentioned of, say, Zoo with Dreadlord, for example.
Yep.
And it's just one card, and the card in itself isn't terrible. You're not playing a 3-mana 0/1 that does this, right? It's actually just okay.
So what you're trying to say is, for the sake of one card, is that what you're getting at?
I know you hate me for things like this, but I generally think in this format where you cannot guarantee that you aim one deck against another, and it's cards like Harrison, I think it's fine.
But isn't that backwards logic?
My logic often
Isn't playing tech cards to improve certain matchups better when the field is narrower and you know what you're up against? Whereas when you're going to potentially have to play against the field as a whole, and on top of that, when your picks are being essentially randomized at the end, so you have very minimal control of what you're playing up against, isn't then targeted tech cards worse instead of better?
I will say you are narrowing the field because the volume of bans there are.
Okay.
It's not like you're rocking up to a regular tournament where one player could bring these 4 classes and another player could bring a completely different 4 classes. You are banning, you have a rough plan and you're going to see what 4 classes roughly are going to end up being picked, right? If you don't ban Druid first, the team is probably going to pick Druid, and you can work like that. So Druid can be played. Harrison isn't a terrible card. It could be in the Warrior for the pick we saw in the last series, but we might see it play out in this series. But for now, we're just going to go to a short break while we get the players ready for this game. So don't go anywhere, guys. We'll be right back. We are back. Sorry about that slight pause. We just had a little bit of an issue, just making sure the players are ready, and I believe they are now. And just getting back into it, it is going to be the Control Mage from New Zealand going up against Portugal's Paladin. And now we can maybe answer the long-asked question since 5 hours ago. How do you play this matchup? Everything was just thrown away. And we thought we knew what we were talking about, and apparently we don't. So I'm very interested now to see how a completely different team of players approach this Paladin versus Mage.
Yeah, no one tweeted me either.
I'll tweet you.
Okay, thanks. I've had a lot of success in this matchup playing it, not slowly, but stretching out resources. The thing that I described before that huge blowout game that we saw on day one, where you can keep enough resources to consistently threaten lethal to stop them from Jainering, really effectively beats Jaina for me, which of course is the way that you have to think about the matchup, because you win a lot of the games where they don't draw Jaina anyway. So how do you set out to beat that? The game we saw yesterday was a completely different plan, whereas if you just play all the cards out of your hand as rapidly as possible and never press your hero power, you beat Jaina because they're dead on turn 7.
Oh, and you already failed the game?
I did, yeah,
The game started and you said that word.
Yeah, one of these days we'll get there.
Okay, so let's look at the opening hands. Corridor Creeper, more than likely a keep. Do you agree with that? You just always...
Do you agree with that? Do you agree with the Corridor Creeper? You're going to keep the Corridor Creeper?
You're going to plan for the future?
You're going to play for 0 mana after your ball gets cleared?
Last match of the day. So, well, seriously though, is it it used to be 100% keep, because Corridor Creeper
when it was a
pretty
5/5,
busted.
it was one of the best cards to ever exist in Hearthstone, yes.
We've just seen it get thrown. What do you think? Because I still think it is an extremely powerful keep.
They didn't have a 1-drop, and they kept Blessing of Might. That's the explanation.
Okay.
So, based on what we saw yesterday of just playing 1-drops, dumping your hand, buffing them up, dealing damage rapidly, similar to what we saw earlier, right? We were talking about how Questing Adventurer has been added to Miracle Rogue as an anti-Big Spell Mage kind of thing, because an early minion can't be interacted with by Mage. They have no Frostbolt, they have no small spot removal early in the game. So what we saw as we were talking about that is that Team USA dropped a Firefly and then slammed Cold Blood on it, which is essentially the same thing. It's a huge threat that can't get answered. So Paladin is capable of doing exactly that same kind of that situation with Blessing of Might instead of Cold Blood. And really, the only way that they have to prevent that is this Enchanted Raven coming down on turn 2 to just contest the board state.
As always, Raven doing the heavy lifting and getting the work done in the early game at least. And now, what I will say is, I imagine just in terms of team interaction and planning of how the players work together, if I was Lazy A, I would just have instantly said to someone, right, Flame Strike, that card, someone keep an eye on it, you know, someone remember, because although as a professional player, you would be used to doing it on your own, I think it's important to utilize the fact you have 3 people as well watching and playing the same game. You just shove that over to someone else and say, you remember that, let's carry on.
And there you go. We've already seen infinite % more hero powers this game than we did when we saw the same match on day 1.
I still don't know what I think about this Blessed of Might keep.
Okay.
I feel like if you've not cast it yet, then it wasn't worth keeping.
But there's an Enchanted Raven on the board that was there preemptively, right?
Yeah.
If they'd have gone Firefly on turn 1 and then it's pass from the mage or it's ping from the mage, then you can think about it.
Yeah, that's true.
But with the Enchanted Raven there, it's never going to connect more than once, and you're really trying to engineer a situation where it connects more than once. But this is now one of the best possible starts from the Control Mage, and they're actually just winning on board.
Into a Tar Creeper
against
too.
Odd Paladin into a Tar Creeper, yes.
And Blizzard's lock loaded and ready to go for turn 6 as well. So it's not as if they, you know, if that Blizzard was a meteor, then things get a little bit more dicey just because you don't have full control over the board clear.
Sure.
But the Blizzard, even if there's Divine Shields on the board, even if there's slightly bigger minions due to, say, a Fungomancer that we can see in hand, well, Blizzard still does a fantastic job at clearing the small stuff off and stalling to be able to either ping or follow up with, say, the Flame Strike that both teams are aware of in hand right now.
That's right. You hit them for 1. Assert your dominance.
I want the Raven to go face this turn.
I'm a big fan of people pushing 1 damage in situations like this. You may have caught on, but it just gets me unnecessarily excited.
Okay. Would you explain why?
Because
I'm not being funny, most people would trade.
Because it's a 1-1 and a 2-1, and you feel like you're getting
exactly.
back.
That's there is a process that requires discussion, at least for the average Hearthstone.
There is a very old standard in card games that it comes down to the theory of who's the aggro, who's the beatdown, and when there is such a discrepancy as there is between these 2 decks, and one is purely interested in pushing damage and one is purely interested in surviving and does not care one little bit about pushing damage, situations like that, when 2 minions are going to trade inevitably over the course of the next turn, as the aggro deck, it is never your job to make that trade happen.
Right, and as you've just seen exactly right now, there's 1 extra damage against Mage than there could have been, and that was always going to happen, as you said. So,
and if you keep an eye on every time that happens and just track whether it was relevant, yes, it will be a small percentage of the time, but you will spot games where it has been relevant, and that all counts. It all adds up.
I think when you're off to a rough start in this matchup as well, that extra damage definitely adds up because you need every single point you can get.
Yeah.
There are some strong turn 5 plays that I talk a lot about it, you know, in this deck and kind of a lot of the current more aggressive decks. Turn 5 is like the turn you cement something onto the board with the popularity of Fungomancer, the level up in this deck specifically, but then also decks like even Zoo, you look at just getting the Dreadlord safely on the board.
Yep.
It really is a
Odd Rogue, laying a
Sure.
platform for a Cobalt Scalebane, all those kinds of things, yeah.
And we're going to see the setup again. There is 3 dudes on the board. Hero power has been played, so there's no, you know, coin in to maybe squeeze something else out. It's just going to be regular 1-drops. But Still not a bad setup. A Divine Shield, a 2 health minion, and then 3 dudes that you can buff next turn. And especially even more likely because there is double level up in hand. So we talk about, well, level up's powerful not being played because it could be played, and the mage has to deal with that.
Yes.
They cannot just get hit for 12 or something randomly when they could have cleared a board of 1/1s instead. But when you have 2, I think there's some value of either do you set up for a turn 10 double level up, which is very hard, or do you just say, you know what, I've got 2, I'll play 1 out, and there still has to be some fear of a second?
If you've got 2 level ups in your hand, that scenario that I keep going on about threatening lethal if they play Jaina every turn becomes very easy. That's one thing I will say.
And Fungomancer adds some flexibility to the turn, depending on if this Divine Shield gets pinged, most importantly, I would say.
Yeah. And also that point you raised about setting up for the turn 5 is why specifically Argent Squire hit the board this turn. So, you know, even if Mage as the Mage decided to commit some kind of AoE to the board this turn, Portugal would be perfectly happy with that because they'd still have a 1/1 on board. They'd still have the options. Hello. That's a bingo.
Okay.
Oh, why isn't Admirable here?
What? Was there a follow-up to that I don't know about?
Yes.
Well, enlighten me.
It's fine. I'll tell you afterwards and you'll catch it next time. Yeah.
Okay.
Or Admirable will tweet you if he's watching.
Okay, I'm sure. So there is, again, the oop was for the +1 attack on the Maul, which is all round the most powerful one, in my opinion, because the deck should have a board. If you look at it like the purpose of the deck, so if you've already got the board, the extra damage is powerful. Obviously, Divine Shield.
Yeah, exactly.
The Divine Shield
is where I would
does
go.
a similar job.
Yeah.
I was wondering if there was going to be any kind of like raid leader plus Maul, but that is very susceptible to AoE because it isn't Divine Shield.
Yeah.
So the damage side stacking up a little bit for Portugal right now, but it's also going into turn 6 and 7 for the mage that has the answer to everything. So it's going to start being, I would say, a discipline check for New Zealand right now. When do you AoE? When do you play these clears? You know that they know that you have a Flame Strike as well, so that's definitely something that needs to be considered every single turn. We might even see Flame Strike played as the first AoE to then raise all the other questions to the to Portugal instead of saying, well, they always know I have that one.
This Doomsayer now creates possibilities. The cogs of my mind are whirring because you can potentially like choose to stall here with Blizzard if you wanted to. Then your opponents will be expecting it to be a setup for that Flame Strike on the following turn, and will probably slow play into it, which you can then wipe out with your Dragon's Fury and then Doomsayer to buy yourself the free turn. And then at that point, you can get like an entire Skulking Geist ahead of the play, even actually get something on board. However,
at that point, you just play Dragoncaller Alana. By the time that works out.
no, it'd be turn 8 that you'd be developing onto the board.
Oh, sure, because he would have done it that turn.
Yeah,
right, sure.
But as I talk all that through out loud, it's probably too much of a commitment in terms of AoE. You're using 2 AoEs on fairly low-value boards to set up a minion ahead of the play, which probably ends up not being worth it. So I like the Polymorph usage instead, because Polymorph is not a high-value card in the matchup by any means. So just using it to reduce the pressure on board as much as they did just makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and I keep going back to it, but I think it is very interesting that who's benefiting from that Flame Strike being revealed right now?
I would say New Zealand are purely because it was revealed because it was drawn, right? So if you factor all of that in, New Zealand are benefiting because they drew it. But yes, of course, there is a fear factor on Portugal's side that might make them slow play a little bit more. But I don't think that's as big as you might think, because you always have fear factor playing obviously.
Right, it's just an interesting dynamic, isn't it? Right,
but you always expect them to have AoE. Until you've seen them cast like 3, you expect them to still have more AoE in hand. After that point, you know, the odds say that they might be running out.
Right, and especially because there are certain levels of argument saying Flame Strike's one of the weaker AoEs, because it's one of the most expensive.
Yep.
That does the same as a Dragon Fury pulling your lowest cost spell.
Yep.
So, you know, it is kind of the weakest one outside of Michi, but Michi's a beast in itself. This is still a nice amount of damage, though, and most importantly, There's just still a lot of cards in Portugal's hand. They've not even had to Divine Favor to be in this spot. They've just, yeah, like you said and will approve of, just keep pressing that button to act as a card every single turn.
Yeah.
I'm disappointed I've not seen the Bard yet, though. Not because it's got to do anything, I just want to see it.
But yeah, same play as I suggested before, but of course no Blizzard required. They found the better way of getting there with that Polymorph setup, and now with that Skulking Geist to come out afterwards, which I believe will still kill a second Blessing of Might from the deck, reducing some of the like Leroy burst damage as an out even. It's going to be a nice chunk of control here for New Zealand, getting grip on the board state finally.
And this is where we talk about this quite often in this matchup, but Vine Cleaver is a card we talk about, you know, as we head towards turn 7 every single time, because imagine this hand and this board if Vine Cleaver is available. One, that's just a lot of damage through weapon swings, as well as presenting minions onto the board. And that is just, unless you have already the ooze, it's just damage you can't really do much about. There's no Frostbolts, right? You can't Frostbolt face and stop it. It just happens every single time.
Weirdly, outside of Vine Cleaver, Corridor Creeper was actually the best draw in the deck that turn for Portugal, because it actually let them do something that turn, as odd as that sounds. They pressed the hero power and their Corridor Creeper got cheaper. Anything else that they drew in their deck is completely irrelevant in that situation.
Is Corridor cheaper?
Yes.
It still is a bit weird to me they didn't just keep it in the opening hand.
Sure.
Just because it's kind of hard to kill as 5 health, right? It
Yeah.
normally requires at least a ping, you know, like 2 mana from your opponent.
Yeah, I mean, the counter argument is, who cares, right? It's a 2/5. You know, if they can AoE the rest of the board down and leave you with a 2/1
well, if your
board,
plan was keeping Blessing of Might,
sure.
it's a 5/5.
Sure. Also, let me fix my face from last turn. The best draw in the deck, apart from Vine Cleaver, was Void Ripper, because then they could actually continue developing through that turn.
That's very
There
true.
was something else in their deck that did something relevant. And speaking of something else doing something relevant, Peru have done something very relevant indeed. And I think taken out what I would consider to be one of the most overlooked and underrated teams in the tournament, which is Denmark. You know, they're not considered a huge powerhouse, but when you look at the lineup of players they have, 2 people with the surname Hoy and Crane, that is kind of hard to argue with.
Wait, Crane's second name is Crane?
No.
Oh. We said 2 people. Oh, I got it. Okay.
Good.
Right, it was just the way you said, oh yeah, there's 2 people with the surnames Hoy and Crane.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, okay, wait, what?
2 people with the surnames Hoy, comma.
Oh, right, okay. Yeah. Also, just a quick mention that we talked about yet, but there are no Stonehills in this Paladin deck. It's double Void Ripper.
Yeah, when you like bringing like Boisterous Bard into the deck, that's kind of what has to disappear, right? If you're playing Boisterous Bard and you're playing Void Ripper, and I think Void Ripper gets in the deck before Boisterous Bard, to be clear. Then it's Stonehill Defender that has to bite the dust if you want to play more than 2 copies of those cards combined.
It was something Sixo tweeted me out not too long ago when I was tweeting about a Paladin list and things, and he said like, no, play it. Well, first he just sent me a picture of the Void Ripper artwork. I was like, oh, thank you, but can I see the list?
Yeah.
He sent me the list, and it was double Void Ripper, no Stonehills, and some extra 1-drops basically. Okay. And I was like, oh, okay, I'll try this out. And I was like, you know what, Stonehill can be sweet, as we've seen from Tarims earlier in this tournament.
Yeah.
But double Void Ripper is just, that gets work done very, very often.
It does.
We see the Keysmith being dropped down. No Ice Barrier, which is probably the general number 1 you want. Also, the Counter Spell, though, does knock out a lot of the big potential plays from Paladin, except the fact that there is full information that the coin is in hand, so Counter Spell loses a lot of its value.
Yeah, after you have Geisted their Blessing of Mights, in theory, Counterspell's insane, right? If it wasn't for that slight fly in the ointment that the coin is still in hand for Portugal.
And now when you're losing on board, yeah, you got the mage to 14 health, but what is the plan now? How do you even kill these minions?
Your plan's find some way to deal damage and just hope that you get there. Because
so Vine Cleaver.
Right.
Like, pretty much.
Vine Cleaver, Leroy, some combination of the above.
There are 2 in the list, 2 Vine Cleavers.
Make enough of a board that, you know, New Zealand are encouraged to just trade into a couple of the minions and not AoE, and then you stick some damage, and then maybe you push through with a raid leader and push 2 to 4 damage here and there. Then the Vine Cleaver gets you over the line if you get them below 12.
Let me think.
It's niche. It's incredibly niche. But that's what you got to hope for.
Definitely not niche.
Big oof.
Also kind of just buffing the Geist to a certain extent when you
Yeah.
look at the board state now.
Daughters of flame.
And when the control mage can play Dragon Caller Alana on the board, you know you're feeling a little bit upset about how this game has gone out, if you were the Paladin, of course.
Yeah. And it was a real slow play here from Lazy A and from Portugal, which kind of allowed New Zealand this free turn to just drop Dragon Caller Alana here, right? Like, one more minion on the board, and it required New Zealand to do something, even if that something was just ping. And if that something did not happen, then, you know, Raid Leader comes down, buffs up, pushes damage, and then suddenly they're at that magic 12 where a Vine Cleaver is at least a possibility.
Right.
Especially a possibility because in that world, New Zealand don't have this Alana clock on you, right? So you can theoretically even get your 3 swings out of your Vine Cleaver before you die.
Okay. And that's one of the things, right? It's one of the awkward parts. If, say they needed to make a big enough board, then they floated, you know, 1 million mana last turn. Could they have leveled up to force the AoE and they know Flame Strike's there, but at least that stops the Alana? The issue for me is, well, what about next turn? Like, unless you draw exactly Vine Cleaver, you're kind of just in the same spot, but 1 turn later, and you've used a level up. And yes, they've used a Flame Strike, but they have more Flame Strikes than you have level ups. If
Yeah,
you're talking
that's
AoE
what I was
overall,
saying. You have to make them do something so you can stall for time to find your source of damage. And then you see the Leroy coming out afterwards. Now with the Leroy drawn, it's only you know, 1 or 2 swings with the Vine Cleaver instead of 3 to get over the line. But I loved Mage here deciding to go face to set up a potential lethal for himself on the following turn, forcing Portugal now to trade because they quickly did the calculations, realizes there's no combination of cards they die to here from this empty board. Blessing of Mights are gone, so Leroy Fungalmancer is max damage. Is that correct?
No, it would be Leroy, Raid Leader, Coin, Maul attack.
Oh, Maul for plus attack.
Yes, sorry, yeah.
Okay.
Exactly that?
Sure, which would be, what, 6, 7, 9, 11, 13 damage, so it's still not lethal.
Yes, it's still not lethal, but that's the most, just because that coin's been hanging around. But it doesn't matter now. The Control Mage takes down the Paladin, kind of in the opposite of what we saw in the match we were talking about from yesterday, where the Paladin just rolled the Mage over, right? It was just stomped in 8 turns, I think it was. But there was a bit of a slower play there. You know, Doomsayer did manage to get off because the Void Rippers was a little bit late to the party, and it just wasn't quite enough.
Yeah, more important was the start of just, you know, Raven into Stonehill Defender, into Tar Creeper. Like, it's just, those minions are just too efficient. And say what you will about, you know, the explosive power and the buff potential that old Paladin have, the cards in their deck are just a hot, steaming dumpster fire. Like, they are not just good value for value, point for point, card for card Hearthstone cards. They're very, very poor. And when they run into, you know, like Big Daddy value Tar Creeper all of a sudden, like, what are you supposed to do? The point is the aggro deck consistently starts like that. The control deck only starts like that one game in 100, you know, and this was the one.
And it's definitely something that makes me a little bit worried for the future of my ladder experience, because we're doing expansion very, very soon, as I'm sure you guys will know. And guess what? Odd and even decks only get more powerful with expansions because there's more cards to choose from.
I honestly think it's disgusting that Blizzard are shoving this even an odd mechanic down our throat. Like, why does every card in the expansion have to be either odd or even?
Okay. Every card in the game is not odd or even, though.
True.
Yeah, so let's look at the matchups now. But I will say it's just raid leaders are going to go next expansion, right? If Odd Paladin's played, it's just going to be a fact at this point. I'm pretty confident in that. But let's look at the matchup. It's your friend Jack Attack versus the Viper 94. Not Viper we saw earlier from Team Germany. This is a different one. It's the Viper. And it's going to be Warlock versus Druid. In the form of Portugal, the Druid is Token Druid.
And the Warlock is Cube Warlock!
Hey!
Yeah.
It's like worst case scenario for the Token Druid.
For it to be Cube Lock as opposed to Even Lock?
Yeah, do you not think it's worse?
I think...
It's like Void Lords, for example, to deal
Right,
with.
yeah, Void Lords are a huge issue. I think a lot of the time, like, you're happy to see Even Lock, for example. But it's weird because it used to be that like Cube Lock was the better of the two Warlock decks for you to see as the aggressive deck,
Right.
because they have the failure rate of Doom Guards, whereas the other deck then, Control Warlock, always Void Lorded you.
Every time.
But now, of course, there's the deck that just plays none of that nonsense. They just really rely on some Fury Protectors healing and Hooked Reavers as their defensive options, and none of those are anywhere near as oppressive as a Void Lord.
Right, especially when the absurd level of damage that Token Druid can put out makes the single, oh, my taunt has 7 health. Okay, one minion.
Great, I killed that with a 1/1.
Yeah, exactly. I traded one of my tiny tokens in with the buffs to kill that, and guess what? The rest of the tokens, you just dead. Whereas Void Lord without Silence just has that, well, that's 9 damage, easy to do, and then 3 separate sources of 3 damage, and then you have to attack. So, I don't know. If it was me and I was on the Druid, I would be pretty happy running into an Even Lock, for example, versus this Cube Lock.
Yep. Yeah, of course. Druid, classically in any form, right now in the current metagame, just can't afford to play a Silence, which is really what you need to have to be able to deal with a Void Lord deck. Druid can't do it because of the power of Oaken Summons. No matter what Druid deck you're playing, Oaken Summons is in there most of the time because it's just so powerful. In this case, to get Violet Teacher. In Taunt Druid, you're getting your Ironwood Golem train running. Some decks are going even greedier with Spirit Singer Umbra that can potentially come off there as well and get you some ridiculous plays. So that card being so powerful means that Spellbreaker or Iron Beak Cow just can't go in your deck because it's just so disruptive to that plan of consistently ripping a Oaken Summons on turn 4.
Yeah, and guess what? The decks that Oaken Summons isn't good enough to run in Druid, they don't run any 4-drops or anything. So, yeah, there's actually just a completely valid reason. I believe the players are just sorting out the game. But I'm just going to check if there's anything extra special in this Token Druid, because there are a couple of different builds, but this actually looks just pretty standard. Everything's there. Yeah, pretty straightforward.
The Warlock build does have a couple of flex points. There is the Prince Taldaram tech in here. Okay. They're playing Plated Beetles. They're also playing the Lord Godfrey, of course, Void Lords, of course, but then Spirit Singer Umbra, Prince Taldaram, the full package, basically, in terms of greedily duplicating cubes. 2 Faceless Manipulators, Prince Taldaram, and the Spirit Singer Umbra. So if the Doomguard train starts rolling, it's never going to stop rolling with the amount of activators that they have. But it's a story of 2 decks that are trying to set up oppressive board states so they can leverage and just go off for the rest of the game. And it's 2 decks where one of them has slightly better tools to answer the other one doing that than the other. Defile and Lord Godfrey are incredibly good against what Token Druid tries to do, whereas playing something and then Carnivorous cubing it, what card in Token Druid really stops you from doing that?
Yeah, the idea is you put them in an awkward position early enough to say, well, if you do all this fancy stuff, you're probably dead unless you have the exact Void Lord into cube and the Dark Pact, you know, more than likely, because even just the Void Lord into cube, well, great, there's just the 3 health Void Walkers to get through. Maybe you can get through that and kill them early enough, but no more waiting required. Let's go into game number 3. It's going to be New Zealand versus Portugal. And as we said, it's going to be the Cube Lock versus the Token Druid. And so far, Wild Growth looking pretty good as an opener for the Viper.
What isn't looking good, though, is the fact that I can't see Jack Attack. I enjoyed watching him play, literally, because like I said, it was his first tournament, HCT Sydney, that he eventually then went on to win. But it was very clear that this was a man who had not yet been jaded by the long, hard grind of competitive Hearthstone. He was fresh-faced, he was happy, he was emotive, he was enjoying...
Like you were never.
Correct. He was enjoying big moments of, you know, even randomness, whether they were for or against him. He was just having a good time playing Hearthstone, and it made us have a good time casting Hearthstone just to be able to watch it.
Jack a Wonder approach.
Jack Attack, send me your address. I will mail you the best webcam money can buy, my friend.
Yeah, I'll pitch in as well. I don't mind. But yeah, very much the Aka Wonder approach to playing Hearthstone, I feel. It's no matter what happens, he's a very happy guy. And yeah, if you're having a fun time playing the game.
Until he actually wins, and then he will let out a war cry so loud and guttural that it will shake the building you are in.
Yeah, happy guy.
Yeah.
So double Doomsayer is available as well as a Hellfire. So Hellfire, it's a weird clear. It's not as powerful as on the surface it may seem. You're like, great, I Hellfire the board away. They're all tokens.
I did 3 damage to myself, and now all these 1/1s are 2/2s.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
A lot of the tokens that you're actually afraid of have the Soul of the Forest Death Rattle effect, which generates them as 2/2s. But I will say, double Doomsayer, that can buy you a lot of time,
Ooh, yes.
one after the other. Do you always coin into Nourish Soul?
No. No, you don't.
Okay, I agree.
Yeah. There was a discussion in a previous series, really, of, I think I can't see a good reason not to coin the Nourish was the line that came out. But of course, the good reason is that the coin can be used to fix your curve later. If you wait a turn and then you Nourish, and it takes you to 8 on the following turn, and then on that turn you would like to coin a 9-drop, then that has saved you a turn of getting to that eventual point. But there is no real such plan for Portugal right now. They want to go to 7 so that they can play Malfurion. That's
exactly
where they want to be. Therefore, you coin the Nourish, you get your 7 mana, you get your Arcane Tyrant in play, and then next turn you have the perfect amount of mana that you want, which is 7.
And what I will say, in almost every matchup, it's never a bad idea to get to Malfurion quicker than you would normally be able to. The hero power is so flexible. The card is so good in terms of it generates a board and gives you a very powerful hero power. It's just always good to get there, and when you have a few limited options, that definitely is the one that opens up the most, because suddenly your hero power is actually a good turn. It's like a good card every single turn for 2 mana.
Yeah, it gives you Hunter Syndrome. Everyone's been complaining for a long time, well, Hunters don't have good card draw. You draw a 2 mana Arcane shot every turn. Shut up, get on with it.
I'd rather draw a card every turn.
You do?
Everyone.
You do also draw a card every turn.
Haha, extra card. Double Doomsayer now is just going to negate some of this Malfurion, but again, I think it's still fine. Because really, my worry now is if you're not playing Malfurion, then Malfurion's going to take a turn later when you might want to do other things. Don't get me wrong. The options right now aren't fantastic for turn 8. It doesn't appear to be anything that good, but again, turn 8 can be, at minimum, 3 damage to face, which that's what you want in this deck.
Right.
And you can just push 4 anyway, so that's like 4 damage from this minion. The Arcane Tyrant on the board now. +3 next turn. The Spellstone does get buffed by the Malfurion armor gain as well. So it does open up just a couple more options. Still feels a little bit bad.
What do you think of the choice to take Poison Spiders there instead of Taunt?
Oh, yeah, don't care.
Okay, good talk.
Spellstone plus Swipe can actually kill off the Giant right now. And you can still just hero power face, and then we're starting to just edge towards some of the threatening turns of I have Spreading Plague. Branching Path now is being cast, but can be just +2 attack on every minion, which is kind of like a Savage Roar. And hero power, like this damage starts to get real dicey when your opponent's on 20. You're like, you know what? When can we kill him? That's when you start asking yourself about now.
Do we just get there?
I think draw card is absolutely fine here because there is a setup at least going forward for kill on the Giant. I like pressing that hero power.
The risk now, of course, wow, they've more or less committed to not killing this Giant, is I mentioned that when the cube train gets rolling, it never stops. And you've left, yes, it's not a Doom Guard, but a very, very juicy cube target on the board here.
I do wonder, do you think armor for the second one, so you still could just kill the Giant this turn, was fine? Think they maybe overreached with the card draw? Because of the scariness of the Giant?
You want to armor off the second
so you can
proc of the first Branching Path, and then buff the Spellstone hero power.
Yeah.
Sure.
I think it's close, to be honest.
What I will say is that I definitely, my instincts led towards card draw as well, because their hand is just so dead right now. But their hand is doing nothing.
I mean, it was the first thing I said. I was like, oh, yeah, you draw the second one as well. And then just looking backwards, if hit Cube Dark Pact comes down now, you're like, Right, yeah, we have no answers to this. We just lose. Spreading Plague is an answer, though. In terms of buying time, at least.
Sure.
Right, it wouldn't surprise me now if the overall game plan for Portugal was Spreading Plague, Solar the Forest. There's no Whispering Woods available. There's no Valid Teachers there. So this is just one guaranteed way to get some tokens.
How dead are you by that point, though? Can you wait one more turn? I mean, you haven't got a choice here. You have nothing else to be able to do.
I think if you play Spreading Plague now, with another draw so you don't get minions, then you're dead anyway, so who cares, right?
Yeah.
And worst case, you could always just double armor and be like, I'll soak this turn. This turn didn't happen except he develops more minions, which makes the Plague slightly stronger. That is a good card, though. Ultimate Infestation, don't you have heard of it?
I've heard it's won 1 or 2 games of Hearthstone before.
And, look at this Malfurion power already. Just on 14 randomly.
Yeah.
I don't know how, because he did nothing for a couple of turns.
Yeah.
But suddenly New Zealand are on 14. You can die from 2 minions at this point. If anything sticks, you could be dead.
Ooh. Arcane Tyrant number 2.
Face, let's go.
Means this is a UI that is not going to burn any cards. Spreading Plague again. Nourish again is a whiff. Violet Teacher is actually kind of a whiff still. It's a little bit slow. Still, no! Whispering Woods.
Silver Lining. There must be a buff soon. Because it's literally drawn, apart from the Power of the Wild earlier on, and 2 Branching Pass, but that's a kind of, between card. Savage Roar still. I think there's another Power of the Wild as well. And Whispering Woods themselves.
Yep. So now things start to get a little scary if this is not a Void Lord. Okay. 2-to-1 ratio, of course, with 1 Doomguard drawn. Still both Void Lords in the deck. So 67% of the time, that was going to be the Void Lord.
Yeah, now with these Spellstones as well, this removal gets fairly straightforward.
Choosing just to go with 1 here, and I don't blame them because, as I mentioned, that Void Lord is secure.
It's not wide. The board isn't wide enough, right?
Yeah, I mean, and even if it was, it's not getting silenced, and then the damage goes to your face, right? Because even a board of 7 minions that get buffed up to 4, 5, 6 attack, it still takes 2 of them to kill the original Void Lord, and then 3 more have to hit Void Walkers before anything even thinks about going at you.
Yeah, I think like 1 plus the hero power. But again, then your buffs are limited.
Right, and then how much mana have you then spent to buff your minions to 6 attack?
There is an Innovate in the deck, but yes, you are extremely safe at this point. Oh, I think they... Now, this is like a very tricky puzzle for Portugal right now. There are multiple options. None of them feel fantastic. But you can hit in. You can Spreading Plague into Solar Forest. You can use Hero Power and do the play they're doing now. They could have gone Violet Teacher into... or Spreading Plague into Violet Teacher and try and get 1 on the board so you can start generating tokens with spells next turn. There's definitely a lot of options. This creates 1 big Spreading Plague, though. And removes the cube disaster that could happen if that Void Lord does not die this turn. Or the Faceless disaster as well, because if that Void Lord got Faceless, even as a 3 health Void Lord or something, that's still a problem as the Druid.
There is a Defile here, though, that allows the Giant to live and just connect for 8 damage if they want it.
There's also a Godfrey, which I'm sure just deletes the board as he often does.
Yeah. So there's a 1 on the board now. That single trade creates the 2, 3, 4 chain, and then the 5 will clear up from that position. New Zealand are just debating, I think, whether or not they want to throw the Plated Beetle in now and just guarantee that armor gain.
Ah, see, like similarly on the other side, I was wondering whether you Spellstone now. It's probably a bit of a stretch, but just getting the health locked in right now. So the later turns, if you draw a Void Lord, for example, you are so safe you probably win off the bat. Faceless the Giant.
Faceless is an 8-2, okay. Just giddy up. Still no wisps. 9 cards remaining. Godfrey in hand to clear even the first wave of wisps sold that does
first wave of anything.
Yeah.
Oh, nothing really adds up, does it? Is this...
My thoughts are plain.
Board can be cleared with just swipe hero power, take 8, but that's the way it works sometimes.
Alongside the Violet Teacher, that was the best that I got as well. I was really searching to find something better to call out.
Plague, Soul of the Forest, draw Savage Draw next turn or something, but it's definitely... And this is a tough choice to make when your opponent is so low and there's no Void Lords on the board. And they're only on 13.
Innovated for a 1-1. Fascinating. Second Violet Teacher in hand as well. Feels like that Innovate was always going to get that value as a bare minimum and still had the opportunity to do something better.
I think they were just wanted to threaten lethal this turn. Because look at it from Jack Attack's point of view in Team New Zealand. They cannot believe that there are no buffs in hand at this point in the game. 9 cards left. I think there's still a Power of the Wild and 2 Savage Draws.
Sure.
If there's one of those, you're dead.
Sure.
So you have to clear, whereas if there was maybe one less minion...
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. It also means Portugal are then playing to those top decks themselves. You know?
Yeah, I mean...
Not pure bluff value.
They're either clear because they think it's going to happen, or it does happen.
Yeah,
so, and Innovate, I don't think, based on what's left, really changes any calculations of what cards you can work in together at this point.
Almost out of time.
Oh yes, they'll serve me now.
File number 2. Again, this is now a 50-50 on Voidlord Doomguard, and it's Voidlord again. And that now could just be lights out for Portugal, because chewing through this Voidlord might just require every last resource they have from this point.
Yeah, and I feel like Portugal have effectively drawn their deck backwards. They had the Spreading Plagues early, the Soul of the Forest early, no Whispering Woods, no Violet Teachers till the end game. And that's not what, like, you can get away with that in some matchups, right? Because you can be defensive enough as the Druid to survive to that late game to create the awkward board situations and then lethal them. But against literally this deck, you cannot give them time. They haven't even played Gul'dan yet. And then you are never getting through.
Umbra a bit late to the party as well in terms of New Zealand being able to do anything too cool with it. They do still have cubes hanging around in their remaining 10 cards. Kind of a similar story from both sides, honestly, when you think about it. The big power cards, the big combo activators, Tal'Daram, Umbra, 2 cubes, Gul'dan. All in the bottom 10 for New Zealand. And then, of course, the Wisps and all the big buff damage dealers, the Savage Roars, are both in the bottom 8 for Portugal as well. So both decks have kind of been playing a weird, neutered version of their game plan up until this point.
I wonder whether that was a potential Godfrey turn, just to wipe all the death rattles away. But then looking at how that was sequenced with the Hellfire as well, like 1/2/2 is absolutely fine. So Godfrey can be saved for the emergency, you know, break in case of explosion of strength on the board.
Yeah, we talked about how Hellfire is a bad AoE in this matchup, and they just found a way to make that good AoE, whereas Godfrey is always a good AoE for the matchup.
And there's Gul'dan, and right now, trade in the Void Lords, play Gul'dan, ask your opponent to do some quite incredible things.
So many.
Or don't. Or push 3 and play the Gul'dan. More or less the same effect.
Yeah.
Take your pick.
Or just kill the 2/2. It's one less dude on the board to attack, right?
It's true.
And I think the Godfrey, you know, I mentioned it could have been played last turn. Obviously, the better play was found. But I think the Godfrey makes just the Slam Gul'dan, you're extremely safe. But even if Portugal, now drawing almost all of their deck, make the best possible turn they can imagine with all of their cards, there's the Void Lords, and then worst case, drop Godfrey. Your board has gone. You cannot remake it now. The cards do not exist. You have played them, and you didn't make it happen. And this is filth on every single level. Salt in the wound. There's the Savage Roar you could have done with 15 turns ago.
Well, Viper, it's been fun.
Yeah.
Had a good time. There were laughs, there were tears. It was a roller coaster of emotions. But I'm afraid Jack Attack is looking like he's secured this one for a 2-1 lead for New Zealand.
Yeah, and what do you make of the choice, just while this game's not over yet, but I just don't see the outcome going any other way. But what do you make of Q-Block as a deck right now? 'Cause it definitely isn't #1 like it used to be.
I think it's still powerful, honestly. I think it still has its uses in just being a very greedy deck that's just, you know, full of power, full of resilient threats, full of, you know, recurring threats, something that Evenlock doesn't really have. Evenlock kind of plays its stuff and then it's out of stuff.
Right.
Whereas, you know, Q-Block can keep going for a lot longer. I definitely think it's a more fun deck to play, personally, than Evenlock as well. So I hope it sticks around for a little while still. I'm happy with the power level it's at, though, because it was seriously a problem for a while.
And I am extremely glad. I said this at the time when nerfs were announced to happen, but the nerfs weren't released yet.
Yeah.
Is that please do not touch Cube. Cube is a beautiful Hearthstone card. I never want to see that changed. It's perfect in my eyes.
Feed now.
Now the important part, you know, we've kind of said this game is over, but the important part for New Zealand is close it out. Don't do anything silly. You know, don't get fancy. Just make it impossible to lose. Don't try and win. In my book, that's how I would explain it.
Sure.
Because you can still slip. There's still a Savage Roar in hand and a Power of the Wild, so there's still a great amount of burst potential. But the key is there's only the burst potential once. And Jack Attack's on 25 health, and there's 7 taunts on the board.
Yeah, soon to be a lot less of those as well. And the fact that the Void Lords have all gone down without being able to be Tal'Daram'd and cubed, I'm a little bit suspicious now that maybe that full board with a position where Godfrey wasn't relevant has maybe created a scenario where Portugal can still get out of this one unscathed.
Death is eternal.
I think there's enough AoE left though, right?
It's not.
It's a second L5, second Defile.
Okay.
So you Godfrey this to High Heaven, and then they Whisper in Woods, and you kill them. Like what? So you tell me what's the saving grace here for Viper?
This board requires to be AoE'd. Okay,
Right,
Lord
agree.
Godfrey AoEs it, and then they Whispering Woods, and then you don't have any of those AoEs in hand, and you have 6 cards left in your deck, and then you don't draw them, and then they have Savage Roar and Power of the Wild in hand, which is a ton of damage.
Okay.
Not saying they're favoured. I'm saying
no.
it just may have been premature to call it over.
That's why I said that they need to just secure just the last home stretch, because you are playing against someone who has drawn their whole deck, right? And that's something to bear in mind. Obviously, you know, Jack Attack's close to that as well.
This is cute.
Nice, yeah.
Very, very cute indeed.
Just Aero Power to face as well. Let's go. Even Dark Pat's in the 2-2.
Yeah, screw that 2-2 in particular.
And
no one likes that guy.
Wow, it's just a trio. And this is similar to what I was saying, where New Zealand are like, right, we're on 32. We have 3 taunts. That's a lot to get through right now.
It is.
And time's running out mainly because of fatigue at this point for Portugal, which is, I think, a nod to why we saw the Hero Power go face as well, instead of trying to set up easier kills on our minion.
Yeah.
There's Savage Roar. Now they're like, so Umbra is a scary card, right? Do we trade? I personally do not think they have time to trade.
Yeah, there's 2 cubes remaining in the deck, but the question is, what do New Zealand end up cubing, which is relevant if you leave the Umbra on board.
Death is eternal. My turn is not.
Decides that not only is the Umbra staying alive, but the Treant is as well, and they just have to push damage here and set up lethal for themselves potentially in the next coming turns. There is a Hellfire picked up for Jack Attack and New Zealand though, and there is still that Godfrey in hand which can resolve to clear this board. It could on the previous turn, but they didn't have the contingency plan against the other Whispering Woods, and now they're starting to get there.
And I think I prefer Godfrey this turn because it leaves a minion on the board.
Okay.
And also, that's both Solar Forest gone. You don't need the repeat.
This will be
Sure.
And you can still hero power. So I do like this Godfrey play. Godfrey's like,
Yeah,
looking at the wall.
All right, yeah, whenever you're ready. Okay.
Switch them all to standing in line. It's like, bang, 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 go. And now we are going to see the outcome, I would say, of this game now. Whispering Woods into Power of the Wild, make it as powerful as possible. We can see the Hellfire's there, Fatigue's there, and also, guess what? The Warlock hero power is very good. Whether it's the Death Knight one or not.
Correct.
Cube Godfrey.
Hellfire and Doomguard here. Even potentially, just to end the game even that much quicker.
Yep.
I believe it's only Fatigue for 2 next turn, right? And not 3? Because if it's Fatigue for 3, it's just lethal.
I think it's 3. Okay.
Then it's just lethal.
I'm sure it's 3.
You win.
There we go. Viper concedes, and Jack Attack and Team New Zealand do get win number 2 on the board with the Q block. And there were a few moments there, but I will say I do think that the token druids of Portugal kind of went really backwards with the deck order, and sometimes that happens. And I think it was just, if they look how powerful it was when they were in a rough spot. When that happens earlier in the game, there were no real answers. Like, you literally need a Void Lord from, the Skull of Manari or something, or to just play one out as quickly as possible. But the Void Lords came down, and the answers were not there from the token druid. So, like I said, win on the board for New Zealand.
Yeah, you saw that even after the Gul'dan came down and we kind of just wrapped the game up and called it done, that Spreading Plague turn gave them enough in the bank that if there wasn't that final Hellfire getting drawn from New Zealand, there was still a chance.
There was a moment.
There was a hope. And that cannot be said too often. It's not often that a deck without Silence and without Transform kills 4 Void Lords and is still continuing to threaten lethal.
Yeah, and I will say as well, kind of unfortunate that the card they overdrew was the second Savage Roar. That would have been a huge additional amount of damage, or at least the threat of damage as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a bit of a nutty game, that one. So what else do we even have left for these players now? You've got the pick order over there, I believe. Do you know?
Nope.
Is that not?
Right in front of you, Raven.
It was under a piece of paper, come on. So it looks...
You see what I have to work with on a daily basis?
You know what? Fine. While we work out what game we've got coming up next, we're just going to go to a short break while we set the players up and get them ready, and while Sol sulks for just a couple of minutes. We'll be right back in a minute, guys. After a bit of a rocky start, New Zealand are 2-1 up versus Portugal, going into a fairly favoured matchup, I would say, and it's going to be the Shudderwock Shaman into the Control Mage, and I feel like this is pretty rough for the Control Mage. Is there even a good battle plan laid out for this? Nah?
On a scale of 1 to honest, how honest would you like me to be?
2.
2? Oh, yeah, it's super draw dependent. Mage can definitely win.
Okay, I did not understand what 2 was supposed to mean. Never mind. But yes, Control Mage, extremely slow deck, built to remove things. Shudderwock doesn't really care about the minions it plays on board, quite honestly, most of the time, when it's only really bothered about having the activations for Shudderwock itself, which means, Mage gives them time, and guess what happens when you give Shudderwock time? They win the game. We saw that earlier today in the Warrior matchup with Russia, and it was just like, well, we couldn't quite kill you fast enough, even with the the key activations in the form of Grumble being bottom 6, bottom 5 in the deck. Yeah, plenty of time. It was all right.
It was, yeah. And to give a earnest answer to your original question of is there a battle plan for the Mage, it's play stuff, actually like play some big spells as quickly as you can, just load them up, get them in the bank, and then just try and like power out like Lich King into Alana in the late game and just see if it sticks. Because even Volcano doesn't deal with an Alana board,
it's
right?
just too much.
3/5/5s is already 15, and you're aiming to deal a lot more than that.
Let's go. Ting Tong going to be the pilot for this deck, and a slight smirk from Sottles. There's Shudderwock. There's Grumble. Seems good right now. As to me, these are both keeps in this matchup. But what about you, Sol? Give me a reason not to.
Because it's the discussion that we had previously, right? Card draw snowballs. If you keep these two cards, this is not your combo. Grumble plus Shudderwock is not your combo. Your combo is Grumble plus Shudderwock plus Life Drinker plus Saronite Chain Gang. You have to have drawn all of those to even have a bare minimum percentage of going off. So if you keep these two cards, you're not hitting an Acolyte on 3 very often. You're not hitting a Manatide on 3 very often. And that means that you're then not powering through your deck as quickly as you can.
Right.
So because card draw snowballs, the first card draw card gets you closer to the second card draw card, which gets you closer to the third, which gets you closer to each of those combo pieces incrementally. That would be my argument against it. However,
you'd keep him.
I'm not sold that I'd keep both of them, to be perfectly honest.
So my view is if you keep him, like, I don't know, maybe I'm too linear with it, but to me, if you keep him one, then just keep them both, and the rest of your deck can try and get there, right? Because you still have time. You're not in a major rush, but I would rather try and mentally remove the point of Shudderwock being the last card in your deck for some reason.
Fair enough. Oh, hey, a Saronite Chain Gang and a Life Drinker is the first 2 draws.
Told you it was right.
Fair enough. Let me actually check the list really quick, because there's a couple of things that can have an impact on this. If there are 2 Life Drinkers and 2 Saronite Chain Gangs, which, okay, fully on board now with New Zealand's decision. If you're playing 1 Life Drinker, that Life Drinker is in itself kind of as rare to draw as your Grumble or Shudderwock, if you want to look at it that way. And then, you know, the merit of like throwing it back, and potentially you can just pick up Acolytes or Farsights or Manatide Totems, and then your card draw snowballs and everything I described. When you're playing 2 Life Drinkers, 2 Saronite Chain Gangs, then I can totally get down with the argument of I have the 2, quote, rarest cards in my deck, in my hand already. Everything else will take care of itself. It makes a lot of sense now that I look at the deck list in more detail. Yeah,
and just a bit of a nod to a couple of differences. There's double Doomsayer, of course, in this mage list for Zuka. 1 Acolyte of Pain, 1 Arcane Keysmith, the 2 Saronite Chain Gangs, I think, is the most common differences in some lists you'll see.
The most common difference.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
That does make sense.
I guess those are words, yeah.
When you add the rest of my sentence to it, it makes sense.
Sure.
You just pick a couple of words and go, they don't make sense. Like, well, that's why I said the other words as well.
New Zealand have drawn very well after that keep as well. They found the Saronite Chain Gang, they found the Life Drinker, and they found a Farsight to start some card draw rolling as well. On top of that, they had the Earth Shock to deny the card draw from the Mage, which kind of puts pay to that theory that I was describing earlier of just try and power through your deck, pump out some big spells, and then get a big push with the late game threats. That's very hard to do if your card draw gets denied with the Earth Shock.
Yeah, and one of the awkward things here as well is like a card like Witchwood Piper that I think is maybe a little bit...
All right, pack it up.
that I think is a little bit underrated overall. It draws the Arcane Artificers, like, so what in this matchup? That's the issue, right? You're playing a 4-mana 3/3 draw 1/2 that has no real impact on the game. It's going from bad to worse for Portugal, and New Zealand are just blessed at this point. I mean, maybe one of these players is Hagatha. They're just getting all the key cards, and I think it is Ting Tong. What?
I'm lost. Why does that make you Hagatha?
Because Hagatha's like a crazy witch.
Right.
And she's summoning all the cards perfectly in order.
Right, okay.
Law time!
Bit of a reach, but okay.
I'm okay with reaching at this point. Because this, in all honesty, this is almost a paint by numbers game with Shudderwock right now.
Yeah, you just have to be careful not to make an enormous mess of the hand that has been dealt you. And I think leading out with a life drinker here makes a lot of sense because, as I mentioned before, like Saronite Chain Gang, you want to engineer a turn where you force your opponent to kill the Saronite Chain Gangs with difficulty, right? They have to make them commit something from hand to kill your Chain Gangs, or else you're threatening to grumble them in the future. I think, you know, with how secure of a world they have, they can even go for the quasi-guaranteed Shadowwalk setup with the, you know, grumbling your Zola specifically.
Right,
if you want to. It's not truly guaranteed like the Murmuring Elemental setup is, but it allows you one complete rebuy, so that if your first 9-mana Shadowwalk whiffs, you can at least then get a guaranteed
to try again
9-mana Shadowwalk that then has to try again.
Yeah. So I've got a question for you while we just see what else Team New Zealand can draw. With all the downsides we've discussed for the last 2 days, because we've cast a lot of Shadowwalk about Zola, why are people playing it? What are the positives? Because a lot of the time we talk a lot about Murmuring Elemental, 100% if you can get the combo off.
Yep.
In general, it's just a cheaper card that is easier to fit into your curve.
Yep.
You don't necessarily need to proc it with a Battlecry, you just need to literally play the minion if you just want the base level to go off. So why are people playing Zola right now?
Because it doesn't cost 2 mana.
Okay.
That's the simple explanation. And not playing Zola instead of Murmuring Elemental allows you to play Prince Keleseth. That's pretty much the reason. And there is just value to Prince Keleseth.
Okay, yeah. I can get behind that. Because it's just, I felt like, because we've talked a lot about the downsides of Zola, everyone's bringing it. I think it's important to highlight why.
Right. What confuses me, to be perfectly honest, is the Pyromancer list that then plays Zola instead of Murmuring Elemental when that happens, because
you're playing 2-drops anyway.
Yeah, then you're not disallowing it. And you know, if you do want a more in-depth answer, you know, that's the part that I agree with. Like, if you want to play Keleseth, obviously you have to play Zola. The part that I sometimes disagree with is that people, you know, argue that Zola is a stronger card in isolation because it creates worlds where you can, you know, get extra copies of Saronite Chain Gang, for example, and then play them so they enter the Battlecry pool again. Whereas, like, Murmuring Elemental into Saronite Chain Gang is still the Battlecry. It goes off twice, but you're not getting that full setup for your Shadowwalk turn at the end. So that, to me, doesn't make a great deal of sense. But I do get on board with the argument that, like, Prince Keleseth is a card that can potentially win games on its own. And so if you're playing a list with no 2-drops, obviously Zola is the fallback.
Okay. And while that happened, the board got a little bit more full for Portugal. With the Keysmith being played, it is in fact a Spellbender, but again, just not a heavily impactful secret in the way this matchup, or the way we can see this matchup shaping up. There is no need of hexes at the moment that the Spellbender can eat up. We are going to see the Hagatha get dropped down and sold. You cannot see Rock's back in his chair ever so slightly. And my question is, hand size issues?
It's also a failure rate. Potentially. Hand size issues exactly is just you can now get in a position your entire hand is minions, which means your hand is not getting much smaller apart from this healing rain. And then if you do get to that spot where you don't get those bounce backs that you need, we saw in a previous series, I can't remember which team it was, but they ended up in a position where the Saronite and Grumble did go off in the right order, but the hand got filled by the 9-mana Shadowwalk that got bounced back from Zola. And yes, again, that means you can play another 9-mana Shadowwalk on the following turn, but it's not explosive. It's not game-ending. It's not playing 10
all you've done is reset to the same scenario, right? Except often worse, because your hand's full if you have Hagatha. Also, this may be an issue with, as you stated at the very start, if you don't, like, mulligan in a regular fashion, then you don't have that card draw, where there's still kind of like a couple of cards missing that would really cement it. The multiple Saronites, the multiple Life Drinkers, which do, if you get those 9... Wait, what just happened? Was that Unstable Evolution? Oh,
hello. Yeah, Ting Tong has pretty much the same reaction we did to that turn. That was kind of goofy.
Would you have even played it that turn?
Unstable Evolution? Yeah, I think so.
Really?
I like it.
I just like playing it multiple times.
Yeah, when are you having a full turn that you're going to drop Unstable Evolution?
Next turn is funny.
Next turn is his Zola Grumble turn, though, I think.
It could be unstable. You've got Saronite Chain Gangs on the board. That's fun. 4 mana 2/3s into 5 drops. And
if you have Saronite Chain Gangs on the board, you're definitely doing your Zola Grumble turn.
God, you are no fun, Saul.
Winning's fun, Raven.
Fun is fun.
How many times must we have this same argument?
Stop being so aggressive with these arguments.
The horse is already dead. Let's stop beating it. So yeah, this is what I suspected we'd be seeing ever since Zola and Grumble came into the hand in such a secure position, in such a secure matchup. If you're not doing everything you can in this matchup to reduce your failure rate of Shudderwock to as close to 0 as you can possibly get, you're doing it wrong, because the Control Mage is not threatening to kill you. It's just not happening. Take your time, chill out, draw your deck, find your options, set up your Murmuring Grumble guarantee if that's your deck, or set up your Zola Grumble quasi-guarantee if that's your deck. And New Zealand are playing it out perfectly so far.
Yep, no unneeded risks, including Stable Evolution. And to be honest, let's just talk about Portugal for a minute. They just have to keep on trucking, don't they? You know what I mean? They just have to keep going as best they can and hope. Although the chain of events, the sequence of events that they've been seeing played out on their opponent's side of the board must be progressively more disheartening, as this is literally, what exact cards do you need to win this game? There they are on turns 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Enjoy.
As a wise fish once told me, just keep swimming.
And here we go.
Perplexing.
Why not, right? There's a shard in there, there's a mind control tower. Oh, no, there isn't a shard in there. It hasn't been played here from 0 mana yet.
Yeah, it was drawn from the
far side, yeah.
We could just play this turn.
Could, yeah. But there's...
Oh, no, you don't play this turn, right?
Elaborate.
Because of the spell issue, you're filling your hand with more cards.
Sure, that's a fair point. Is that the reason why he does away from Shudderwock as well in the first place? Yeah.
Just Wind Fury something right now.
Yeah.
Play everything that isn't a minion.
Right. The Glacial Shard does come out of hand though, because you know it just replaces itself with a spell, I believe, and then you might get a better spell to dump from your hand than the Wind Fury or the Rock Bioweapon anyway.
It's also pretty decent. You've got a 1 mana spell and 2 mana spell. You know, choices available. So just get them out of there.
Is the Shard not being played here? I guess they're holding on to that, like, for a 5/5, for a Lich King, right? Like, what relevance does it have in this position?
You're not trying to freeze to stop lethal.
Yeah,
at this point.
No,
so
makes sense.
Is it just, you don't need to go too crazy on Battlecry? Shudderwock can use just for the fun of it. Like I said, winning is fun, correct, Saul? So you don't need the Glacial to win. So now with much less cards in hand, this is a lot safer with the Hagatha procs as well.
Storm drawn. But there
is...
is...
that cuts you out for next turn
2,
as well.
4, yeah, there's 2, 4, 6, 8, 9, 2, 4, 11 damage in play, 14, so they're safe. They're going to get a Life Drinker go off here anyway. The Grumble did hit first, which means they are now going to have to pick up one of these Shudderwocks with Zola to take care of this, but the Hagatha takes care of the majority of the board state. They still have plenty of time. But these percentage chances to whiff like this do not go away.
Why did they hover over every single Shudderwock before they chose the one on the left?
Because it's an important decision.
It's just not, is it?
No, it's really not.
Oh, I switched roles for a second.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think like the Lightning Storm just cutting out a Shudderwock turn is a little bit frustrating. But the Hagatha did just deal with most of the board
Hagatha
anyways.
does the job anyway. There's no real reason.
Yeah.
There is that Lich King. But the board, because the Shudderwock, quote, failed, it just did the small matter of putting 18 power on board, which now demands an answer.
And it may sound weird that, oh, if you're freezing the minions, Why do you need to kill them? Well, the next Shudderwock that you know exists will then guarantee grumble them all back for 1 mana, and that's when you lose the game. So, unfortunately for Team Portugal, you cannot just freeze and pass and try and get this Doomsayer to go off on those. You know it won't happen.
Right. Here we go again. Ting Tong and New Zealand are just discussing if there are any ways remaining that he increases his odds, but with both Chain Gangs played, with Zola played, with Grumble played, he's kind of done all his work at this point.
Yeah, and the awkward thing is still hand size, right? So there's 9 cards in hand right now. If you play Shudderwock, it replaces itself with a spell, and then it can generate another Shudderwock, which goes into 10. Which means if you play the 1-drop again, then your hand's full.
Sure. So we have to be dumping Wind Furies and Rockbiter weapons and Earthen Mites this turn.
And that Crushing Hand is actually a bad one. Because it overloads so much.
Yep.
Even though it would take care of the Doomsayer, it just means you've got to pass the next turn as well.
Yeah, take 3, idiot.
I'm surprised Wind Furies... Yeah, I was going to say, just get rid of it.
Why would you play Mana Tide instead of Wind Fury?
Yeah, it's just get rid of it.
Now then.
Again.
It has finally become time. We are looking... Oh, Grumble goes first. And now, again, it's just that single 9-mana Shudderwock again on the following turn. That's all that's playable. And it means that Lich King lives another day. But the Glacial Shard lockout on the Lich King is very, very nice here. Because as long as Ting Tong can keep going here, and as long as one of Zola and Grumble activates, even if it is the weaker of the 2 Zola that goes off after the Saronite Chain Gang, he's still able to play 1 9-mana Shudderwock each turn, which slowly but surely
it will kill you.
Is going to get him there. It will kill your opponent, but it will also exhaust your opponent at some point of ways that they can kill a bunch of 6/3s on the board.
The problem is, every turn they do this, New Zealand I mean, they have to spend a turn playing all the spells.
Yep.
What you do have to kind of ask yourself, was Hagatha actually necessary this game?
I think the answer to that question was yes, because Portugal have a slightly weird Control Mage board build, which has slightly more minions in it, and they drew a lot of those minions, and they represented a lot of pressure, which, by the way...
They just missed? I think Zola just went off twice. It went Grumble, Zola, Zola.
No way. And spells filled the hand. Oh, no.
I think with Glacial Shard... Wait, what are they pointing at the... Are they... Oh, that's Unstable Evolution.
Okay.
Doom Pact.
That's a polymorph. Yeah, that's a polymorph. That's 2 Doom Pacts. That's 2 Dragon's Furies.
Wait. So with the 0-mana Glacial Shard, did they have to play?
Well, they still have another 9-mana Shudderwock in hand from the previous turn, so it's not like they're completely out of stuff from this point.
Right, I'm just wondering, like, that could kind of, like, happen again.
Sure.
Right? You know,
right, but no, I mean, like, on a following turn, they can dump some of these, hexes and nonsense out of their hand and then try again. It's just...
They're making a meal of this.
Right, but, going back to the Hagatha point, of course, it's a huge detriment to you, and you don't want to play Hagatha ever in inevitable conclusion matchups. Weirdly, in the Murmuring deck, if you've played Hagatha, the truly infinite combo is not truly infinite anymore. There's a weird scenario where Hagatha occurs twice during the Murmuring chain at very specific points that kills all your 6/6s before the Grumble lands. In the Zola deck, that doesn't matter because the Hagatha's only going off once per iteration of Shudderwock anyway, but it's creating this hand size nonsense, and then on top of that, it's meaning that when you whiff, you make 6/3s and not 6/6s. Yep. And for Control Mage, the difference between a 6/3 and a 6/6 is night and day. They can only kill so many 6/6s. They can kill a lot of 6/3s.
I will say that depending on how many minions are left in New Zealand's deck, They might not need Shudderwalk anymore because that Acolyte is a 5/7 right now with all the Keleseth procs that keep going off. So it's just like that. There's a life drink, like an 8/8 life drinker that goes down.
But
like,
they'll just like fatigue themselves.
Right, but I'm talking about the other minions in the deck.
Right.
Because Matron's a lot of removal, but I don't think it's built to deal with this.
There's a 7/7 life drinker hanging around right now in the deck somewhere.
Bloodlust.
What's happened? Why is Shudderwalk so stupid, Raven?
I'm glad you said stupid and not the other word I thought you were going to say. But I don't know. It's very odd.
Why have they played a 5/7 Acolyte when they're having hand size issues?
I don't know. It's why I specifically said if there are other minions in the deck, we know how big they are because of this Acolyte. I never said play the Acolyte, New Zealand. And even if I did, don't listen to me. It's a terrible idea. Oh, and they're doing it as well.
Of course you do it.
Saul's just in disbelief about what's going on in this game that looked like it was a paint-by-numbers matchup.
Wait, the stats don't show as buffed when they're getting burned? That's weird. Why have I never noticed that before? Because Keleseth decks don't usually have full hands. Yeah. Well, yeah, they do. Because you like UI with Spiteful Druid all the time. Why have I never noticed that before?
I don't know. It's not my fault.
Yep, that's it. Hex your own stuff just to get 2 hexes out of your hand, because that's normal.
Saul's casting style has reverted a few years. He's just going to start shouting at the players again.
I'm getting a little bit heated.
This is, though, to be a little bit more serious, if you're playing Shudderwalk, this happens sometimes. Maybe not to this level, but these awkward turns, awkward board states, and awkward hand sizes, it pops up. We talked about it as soon as Hagatha was played. So you do have to have some level of experience and I guess a level head to be able to deal with situations where you just can't do the one-mana Shudderwalks that just end the game right there and then.
Yeah.
I just want a fast sight for that massive life drinker. Death by Frog. Is that 5 hexes now in this game?
I feel like they spent so many turns not playing Shudderwalk and casting spells that they could have cast a Crushing Hands by now. It wouldn't have affected their endgame.
What's worse is, after all this, where's a certain card I'm not going to name in the mage side of things?
Now also, because they've hexed one of their own minions, they have a frog on the board, which is another failure rate for the Zola and the Grumble. They've done like just about everything they could to turn 100% one game into not that.
They have a 7/7 life drinker and a Totemic Might that just got played though. Crushing Hands the Frog, let's go.
That is now 3 layers of frog.
Is this just a toad at this point? I don't know. Is that how frogs work?
That's not how frogs or evolution or biology or anything works, actually.
Yeah, this isn't how Shudderwalk should work either, but things happen. It's just farm animals left, right, and center in this game.
I think Portugal reached for a Doomsayer then. I don't think that's the right plan. You don't want to clear this frog off the board, right? It doesn't make any sense.
They could have Crushing Hands the Frog.
Also, New Zealand bloodlusted the frog when there weren't any minions on the board to trade it into.
No, they wanted 3 damage to face. They wanted to end it.
Yeah.
Lightning Bolt, nice. Frog Killer.
Yep.
Zap it. Yep, there we go.
Yep. Because again, this is normal. This is perfectly normal Hearthstone play. Nothing to see here, guys. Oh, come on!
Just kill him with life drinkers, please. 2.
It's whiffed.
But there's enough life drinkers, right?
There's only one more, isn't there?
Catch.
Oh, there isn't even one more. Ancestral Healing brings the Shudderwalk back up to a 6-6, but, I mean... What?
Where's the Death Knight? I just... Are there any spells left for Dragon Fury? Flame Strike, surely.
I think we've only seen one. I'm gonna be honest, I've lost track.
Same.
We've been here for 12 hours and I'm casting the stupidest game of Shudderwalk Shaman I've ever seen. Hate me if you want, but I don't remember, Raven.
Me neither.
Okay. You're right. In a minute. I got this. It's fine.
What to do? What to do?
So Zan, now if you're Portugal, you basically just have to find a way to clear up these last few threats. And whatever last couple of minions are left in the deck, if they are there, remember, they are huge. They are astronomically large.
Are there any left? The Life Drink or the Acolyte? Syndra goes to burn. Death Knight not burnt though.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a 50-50 next turn.
Wait, are the last two cards?
Death Knight and
Alana?
Yeah, they have to be, right? They're drawing.
2/5 Mana Tide Totem. Lethal! Wind Fury! This is threatening lethal next turn. If you get lethal by Wind Fury and a 2/5 Mana Tide Totem, I'm done. I quit Hearthstone casting forever.
Whoa, be careful. Because it could happen.
No one said I was a man of my word.
Okay.
I'm almost out of cards.
Volcano. Pointless.
Volcano into Doomsayer now. Doomsayer just trying to find that turn to lock out, and now with Lich King, oh, sorry, with the Frost Lich Jaina even off the top, this is going to be Portugal starting a slow climb here to potentially finding victory, because if they can get a turn where this Alana lands and they don't die.
What's the last card?
The last card is everything here, honestly.
I'm out of cards.
Because now New Zealand really have no choice but to try and wait out Mage from fatigue at this point.
And they can, right? So the trick here now is dealing with Alana next turn.
Right.
So what happens is they cannot Crush in Hands is 3/6. So they have to Hex the 3/6.
Mm-hmm.
Which means Portugal cannot afford, do not have time to ping the Hex to make another 3/6. They cannot Alana then. If they don't Alana soon, they're not going to win.
Why don't they have time? They're not dead next turn.
Right, but if they ping, they're not playing Alana.
Right.
And that's one fatigue.
Okay, but if they do ping, what then?
Well, then they just have a 3/6, and then you can probably just pass at that point as the Shaman. Because what they need to do is save double Volcano for the Alana turn.
I agree.
So that means they cannot overload.
But a board of 6 5/5s and a 3/3 is 33 health, not 30. Which means a 5/5 lives at the end, or
but every single turn, it's not getting an attack with the Water Elemental, so it's not healing. So this is... Wait, what happens now? Are they going to get him? Just get him? Just even itself out?
You heal for 2 off every activation.
Right, yeah, because the damage negates, yeah.
You heal for 2 and deal 2 damage off every activation.
I just think you just have to Alana.
Must decide.
You do dot ping, okay.
I actually was going to lean towards this because as we were talking about everything else, you know, I said, okay, what if they do ping? Then you said, well, they just have a 3-6. I was like, okay, but then on the next turn, they voodoo doll and they ping it and they have a second 3-6. Except, of course, that's nonsense because if they already had a 3-6 on board, you then have to target your 3-6 with the voodoo doll when you play it. Right?
Whereas, because it's live,
to get the 3-6 from the voodoo doll and make a profit, you have to play it on an empty board because Ting Tong and New Zealand are not going to make the mistake of playing minions of their own here, even if they had any, which obviously they don't. They have a handful of complete nonsense.
I don't really know what to say anymore. You got anything?
Dimly lit.
I've always got something, Raven.
Anything relevant? Was that it?
Yeah, I mean, if you want relevant stuff, this is the last water elemental that Portugal can generate here. So New Zealand might be feeling like, well, okay, if we can kill this water elemental, then we win the fatigue battle. Except any tool they use to kill this water elemental then prevents them from being able to take Dragoncaller Alana damage off the board.
Yeah, and you see that right away, but very quickly, this heal will not out-heal the fatigue, right? The fatigue's got to stack too fast.
That's the question, because nothing happened that turn for a very long time, and then Ting Tong kind of wagged his finger at the camera. So unless their team has spent this entire process doing fatigue maths and decided that they still come out ahead in this position.
I imagine they've had to, right? I mentioned a little bit earlier about assigning roles to people on the team as the pilot, right? Straight away, the second you have no minions and fatigue's important, you know Alana's there. You know Sindragosa isn't because you saw it burn. So you know that's Alana. You can work out the numbers, right? You just can.
It's much more difficult when there is a water elemental like this in play, or, for example, when Blood Reaver Gul'dan's hero power is in play.
Yeah, it gets really weird.
The breakpoints alter by 3 on each turn. Same with like Malfurion hero power, particularly even with the difference between attacking and defending with Malfurion hero power. But now Zuka has decided that it is Alana time, and now I make that 34 health on board, and the most likely minion to survive the volcano is the water elemental because it's the one that starts with the highest health. But now if you lead out with Lightning Storm, the minimum that Lightning Storm removes from this board is 14. So assuming it high rolls half the time, you are then doing 18, which 18 plus the 15 from a volcano is then 33. What did I say was on this board? 34? So you need a slight high roll from Lightning Storm to be able to get a full clear on this board.
It's not a lot to ask, to be honest.
Sure. That's a lot of 2s.
Yep.
2, 5, 7, 8, 11, 14, 18 remaining.
So the water elemental's target number 1.
Oh, there's a Crushing Hands at the end, though. If there's only one minion left remaining, if there's only one minion left,
Wait. So should Crushing Hands have happened first?
No. Because then the Lightning Storm deals less damage.
No, before the volcano.
Also no.
Okay. I'm asking silly questions, but I feel like at this point we need to.
They're not silly. I'm not even 100% confident that was the right answer.
Brilliant.
Yeah. How has the mage won this game, Raven?
Has it? Because of Geddon? Because Volcano is playable this turn, which is why the Crushing Hands didn't come down.
Sure.
So it's going to be 4. So I actually just missed Zuka's fatigue. What was the fatigue on?
The fatigue is on 4 here, which makes it 5, but now Geddon comes down and threatens lethal. Geddon takes him up to 7 at the end of this turn, and he only fatigues for 5 on the following turn. And now lethal's being threatened, so these guys have the Crushing Hands. It's just lethal.
Yeah, because it went to 4. They matched at the end in terms of that fatigue damage.
Factor in the ping at the end. Forgive me. What do you want?
Not a lot at this point. I don't really know what happened. That game, I feel like, was a journey across time and space. And we ended up in a very, very weird place for a moment. And then I recovered, so I'm back to normal again. Luckily, what happened during that series wasn't completely on camera for us. So that was only a good one. I'm just going to double check if we're going to go straight into the game or not. But that's a game I feel like we need to rewind and go over probably 50 times before we understand what happened.
Yeah.
Because there were so many points where there were so many options available. Like, for example, that Crushing Hands was just around for so long. Would that have made a difference if you played it 20 turns ago? I don't even know at this point. That's the issue, right?
With the way that the Zola ended up failing, or the Zola and Grumble ended up failing so many times in a row, it was, 4 Shudder Walks where Grumble went off first with 2 Saronite Chain Gangs in the pool, and then 1 final Shudder Walk where both Grumble and Zola went off before Saronite Chain Gang with 2 Saronite Chain Gangs in the pool. For me, what that match was is a giant neon glowing billboard for the card Murmuring Elemental.
Would you like a 100% chance? I say chance. It's just not the correct word, is it?
In this tournament, where I keep saying that the ban phase leaves you with, like, the greediest format ever known to man, yes, I want Murmuring Elemental.
Maybe we get to see that next week.
Maybe we do. Yeah, we'll see how teams adapt as we move forward.
Yeah. And I think we are just going to go to a quick break while we set up the next game. So don't go anywhere, guys. We'll be right back with the final game of this crazy, crazy series. We're back. We have composed ourselves, and I hope the teams have too, because that was frankly an experience. It's the only way I've got to describe it. Not sure whether it's negative, not sure whether it's positive, but it happened.
Now I've calmed down a bit. Let's break down some points in isolation. Firstly, we focused a lot on potentially the mistakes that New Zealand were making, but also credit has to go to Zuka, who played that out very well potentially.
Right. With a very bad draw.
Yeah, with a very bad draw. Bottom 3 cards, best 3 cards in the deck, and he still ends up winning in Fatigue. His sequencing with the Voodoo Doll to get the Water Elemental in play first. I talked about one reason why that was good. But then actually Lorinda just came into the room during the break and pointed out that actually then got an extra point of health on board for the Alana turn, which can end up being hugely relevant when it comes down to Volcano maths. The fact that New Zealand were forced semi-full. We can go back and check out, but let's for now say the word forced to play Hagatha was what caused an absolute load of nonsense to take over that game because of the hand size problems. Then when the Hex was used on the own minion, that created another huge problem because there was another minion in play that could then be a target for the Zola. When the Bloodlust was used, not to trade the frog off into a minion, just used to go face, that was a problem. When Portugal recognized the situation and were pinging face instead of pinging the frog to leave the frog on the board, that worked out in their favor as well. And then of course when any game comes down to fatigue like that, the calculations that go back and forth into solving the game and the remaining resources, and from Portugal's side there was an element of just having to shut their eyes and get on with it because there's mystery spells in the opponent's hand.
One Healing Rain.
Yeah, one Lava Burst.
Right, sure.
There's so many options at that point that end proceedings.
Wait, he lightning bolted their own frog.
He had to, yeah. But because he bloodlusted and wasn't able to trade it off because he bloodlusted on a turn where it wasn't on the board. Yeah.
Okay, let's move on though because
I'm not done. No.
Okay,
yeah, carry on.
Let's move on. As you can see, the final game of this series has started right now, and we didn't think that last game went for long enough. So we, we're going to now watch Zuka play Quest Priest. It is going to be against the Egg Hunter though, which from Mage, which doesn't really let a deck play a long game.
Right.
The Hunter decides the flow and the rate of this game, but we'll see now that Zuka is on the Quest Priest, and this is a deck that can pretty much just go on and on and on and on because of the copying. I said Alana. I am still in that last game mentally, but Amara, should I say, just to be able to boost himself up to 40 health and put a big taunt in the way.
Yeah, you say that the Hunter isn't really equipped to play doesn't allow the opponent to play a long game. Well, Mage went turn 1 tracking and then snap picked the Deathstalker Rexar, which potentially is the card that can allow them to play a long game if they want to go for that. And after that incredible Shudderwock game that we just watched, what I was really dying to see was a nice palate cleansing game of Quest Priest versus Deathstalker Rexar Builder Beast.
Right, and there's, funnily enough, like volatile elementals in this list, in this quest priest.
Yeah.
The Archbishop Benedictus, everyone's favorite card.
Yeah.
Double Bone Drake, Abomination, as well as a one-of, I guess, just to help with those death rattles and the aggro matchups. Outside of that, it's, you know, what you would expect. And, you know, talking about Rexar, it is a late-game card, but it is, there are only so many gigantic, crazy powered beasts that any deck can deal with, even one that goes for as long as Quest Priest.
Yeah, that's fair.
Because you do not try and go for the tricky like beasts in this matchup. You pick the biggest possible playable one with potentially stealth or untargetable as a plus buff.
It's just the biggest, ugliest, dumbest pile of stats that you can get out.
Yeah, and then you throw it in their face.
Yeah.
Hunter's Mark, not actually a bad pickup, to be honest, to deal with some big guys.
Okay, yeah, I don't know how preferable that is to just like one of the big threats in and of itself that you could contest like that, but you know, it is what it is. Twilight's cool, will allow a very rapid quest completion here. It's one of the big power tools in the deck, one of the reasons why this deck even begins to function.
Yeah, and I will say as well, the Hunter's Mark, I was thinking like along the lines of this deck does play Anduin, right? So
yeah.
Hunter's Mark, Anduin ping, anything's dead as long as you can target it.
It's worth noting as well, we've talked a lot about Zuka and how he missed out on the proceedings last year and worked so hard to get back in. It's kind of fitting that he's going to end his debut with a priest deck here, because last year, although he didn't qualify, he did still get involved and he was helping Team Portugal practice, in particular with priest, and as it was back then, silence priest. So, you know, from a behind-the-scenes contribution with Priest, he's now graduated to be front and center after fighting his way out of a ridiculously unfavored position in the last game, with a little help from some Shudderwock failure rates and with a little help from Team New Zealand as well. He's now in a spot where he's with his favorite class, and he's just motoring away to a turn 6 quest completion.
Yep, I will say it's unlikely we see Amara anytime soon, because you do want to play it with a Zola combo just to get at least 2 procs off. I will say as well, the play dead, actually pretty important. For example, there were 2 Bone Drakes in this list, so you just gain an extra dragon, so there is some value right there. But also, speaking of value, we did see Team New Zealand just coin into Rexar. There was no coin high main. None of those, even though that's extremely powerful play and has been since the dawn of time, is no, I am going to try and start making beasts very, very quickly. And it did clear the minions on the board as well, of course.
How do you feel about even just playing the high main on 6 here? Because they've got a handful of essentially death rattle activators, right? There's a Play Dead, there's a Terrascale Stalker, and there's a Carnivorous Cube in hand. And they've played out their one minion that's kind of good with all of those onto the board to be vulnerable.
Right, I think the play dead and the Terrascale on their own aren't great. You need it on there because those combined with the cube turn are the big turns. You want a board of high mains. But if you don't play the high main, you can't activate. You don't want to just gain hyenas. They'll just get cleaned up. There's tons of cards in the deck. There's Primordial Drakes. There's the Psychic Screams, which still is a consideration just for the high main anyway, because screaming stuff away is frustrating.
Sure.
But Dust Breakers, Spirit Lashes, you don't want to waste them on 2/2s, especially when later you could have a huge stealth minion, attack, then cube play dead that. And then that is a huge problem with no Psychic Scream.
Fair enough.
Stranglethorn Tiger looks great to me.
Does. Would have been either a Pterodax Hatchling, is that what that card's called? 3 mana, 2/2 adapt thing, or the Beetle that would have been picked. It was the Beetle that was picked. And actually doesn't go stealth here, just goes 3/7 for Taunt and Armor.
Probably just wants to play something that doesn't just snap die to Anduin. But there's only so long you can do that for, and your deck's full of those things, so I don't think you can play around it really too much.
Right.
I guess it was more just to have something to play this turn. Again, I doubt we're particularly going to see the Acolyte ever be played in this game. There's no need. This Priest deck doesn't really kill you. It just doesn't die either. You know, it just goes and goes and goes. So why play something that'll accelerate your card draw when also you have Rexar? That's your card draw. Done. And this Beetle actually just getting work done right now. It isn't really killable at this point.
No. This is going to be the crucial card for me, the Stitch Tracker, because tracking is actually counterintuitive. Quest Priest, one of the most resilient decks in the game, so you actually don't want to be tracking over potential options in your deck. You know, as old as time as that argument is about, you know, tracking bad card because you discard 2 of your options. No, it's fantastic 99% of the time. But in specific matchups, you do want to use all of your individual threats, so tracking can be a dangerous card to go for, whereas Stitch Tracker is the same thing with no downside because it creates the duplicate and leaves the remainder inside your deck.
And also as well, because there is still a cube in the deck, like that's absolutely huge. Like, that's the one you're looking for in my book, at least.
Sure.
Because cubing, you have unlimited minions that should be decent to get cubes off if they survive long enough. So it just has to be, because all the time we see the bird with the rush, bit of a healer as well. The 4/4 kind of awkward to deal with as well, especially when you're expecting potential Anduin. There's Primordial Drake, it still doesn't die too because of the health on that Beetle. So I would say actually a pretty heads-up choice in terms of this Beetle play earlier on.
Sure.
When Stranglethorn just feels like an automatic choice almost all the time.
Yeah.
Spirit Lash into Dust Breaker is going to get the job done now. But this is it, right? It's like, okay, good job. It's 2 AoE. I'll just drop another beast on you this turn. And that's the grand plan. That's how Mage wants to finish this game and finish this series. And I imagine, to be completely honest, New Zealand are probably a little bit frustrated with that last game and really do not want to lose this series, as that will be a sore point based on that Shudderwock game.
Yeah, I imagine so.
There's second cube, though, so Stitch Tracker for a cube is now just out the window.
It is, and the instinct of the pilot there of Mage was just to snap King Crush this turn. I think 2 seconds into the turn, that King Crush was already lifted out of the hand, but then clearly the team discussions all kicked in. It looks like Mage has now diverted. Going for the Pyromancer play, drops the card first to get space in his hand. And now there is a Corpse Widow option, which is a nice card because it's actually a card that's playable in a deck, but you never really want to be taking a 5-mana option off the first pick of a Builder Beast just because it limits you so much going into the second pick.
I will say, of all the matchups, this is one where you can just slam a 10-drop.
Sure.
Because what they're going to do, you're not under any pressure in most turns. Wow. It's like New Zealand really just going with the small ones, to be honest, at this point. Just getting playable minions on the turn.
Well, so they had to, really, because if you think about it, they played the Pyro to make room in hand for that Builder Beast in the first place. So if they then built a beast that was too expensive to play that turn, like, what else are they playing? I think that indicates that they don't really want to be playing anything else out of this hand right now.
Yeah, like an absolute worst-case scenario, tracking. Just to make this, try and make the space if you can get another cheap card, but even then that's unlikely.
Absolute worst case scenario, you'd rather Hunter's Mark your own Pyromancer than you would track. There's the egg. That is one of the key engines that really makes this deck function in the early game. Still very powerful later on as well. A 5/5 on the board is very, very useful no matter what turn it is. See Exhibit A, Ultimate Infestation.
Yeah. Definitely going to be important how you utilize the Death Rattle effects, though, in terms of play deck and the Terror Scale. I always get a bit baited when I see a choice like this. I like Echo and Rush, but when you combine it with the other card you picked, you often don't get to Echo. So is Rush good enough?
Right.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Like the Hound looks great as a singular minion.
Right, but I think the second part of your sentence there is very important as well. Ignore the word Echo and just pick it because it's got the word Rush on it.
Depend on what the board looks like.
Right, it's just good enough in itself. But, with the Tundra Rhino already offering charge, not a great deal of purpose. I said a great deal of paupers.
It's a great deal of Emrys in the hand now. That is just playable.
Sure it is.
Straight, just Portugal, like, what does this one do again? I mean...
Okay, now Portugal, your mission in life is to find some way to get a copy of Shudderwock in your hand.
God.
You're priest. You can do anything.
Be reborn in the heart.
Pretty glad they held on to that hunter's mark.
Oh boy. Yeah, do you want a hunter's... I mean, again, within seconds, Mage is picking up a card and wanting to play it, and I think he does need to take a moment here and just allow all the options to float in, because, yeah, your hunter's marking an 8/8. There's a good chance there is a 16 health minion.
Yeah, I meant the hunter's mark for the other stuff.
Exactly,
yeah.
right. I mean, you know there's a 16 health minion in the hand because you know Amara is in there, first and foremost, and that thing has Taunt.
If this king could trade, this is double. Oh no, it'll be double trade. Nice.
Wing Blast is a lovely, lovely card.
There was just a small thought there about Psychic Scream. In the, is it just worth proccing the cube because of Psychic Scream?
I think I'd rather have a. I think I'd rather have a cube shuffle back into my deck than 2 5/5s, right? Because you have Stitch Tracker in your hand, so you can go fishing for the cube again, and then just
know what?
And then just go cubing again.
I actually did not consider that actually because the Stitch Tracker is still there. I'm very much used to drawing a Stitch Tracker and then playing it because it's just good.
Sure.
But yeah, you are right, and there's a Psychic Scream as well. So the options there, but also just having King Crush in the deck is actually often just okay when you're not under any pressure yourself. You know, you don't particularly need the 8/8 on the board right there, right then.
Is there a high main remaining for Katharina? I believe there is.
There should be, yes. Unless this list randomly plays one.
I'm not going to tell Raven that he's looking at Portugal's list right now. I'm going to see how long it takes him to figure it out.
Pretty quick.
Okay.
I saw to my side and was like, 6 mana Hofer? Okay, let's go.
Ooh.
Is that an Owl Hawk?
No, it's an Owl Hide, right?
I guess.
It's it's Vicious Scale Hide, I believe.
Oh, sure, because it would be 4 mana.
Yeah.
Oh, stealth. Now, that is very, very important right now. Because
4 damage is quite good as well.
yeah, and oh, this game will get weird. Luckily, Rexar's already gone. But this is what's pretty good, right? So I was just going to say, Psychic Scream, well, it's still in there. You've not killed the minion.
Yeah.
It still exists.
Yeah.
So, and that is just as big a threat in 2 turns and 3 turns, 4 turns as it is today.
Yeah.
Right now.
And now, Battlecry
Death
Rattle recruit a beast. Now, not only is there a high main, but there is also a stealthed 4/7 poisonous Tundra Rhino. Now
You
what?
do not attack. Oh. Okay. I was wondering if you start getting some cube shenanigans on the go.
But what? How does Priest interact with a 4/7, whether it has stealth or not?
Okay, second Scream, a Hunter card.
Second Scream doesn't matter if it has stealth or not.
That's really.
It's
I guess
better,
a Hunter card.
It's better to attack if they
you're
have
right,
Second
you're right.
Scream. Just momentarily moused over the Primordial Drake and remind me that it's an 8/16.
Poison. Good job, Tundra Rhino.
Yeah.
Oh, this is huge. Cube. Death Rattle proc, let's go. And also no Zola for the Amara.
It's just lethal, right?
Hmm?
Is it just lethal?
40 damage?
Raven's like genuinely trying to work out if there's 40 damage right now.
Well, you looked at me like I'm being stupid, like you often do.
I've just lost the plot.
Okay, that's fine. I was like, I know Tundra Rhino's good. This is insane, though, and this is why I was saying, like, does Psychic Scream matter on these minions?
Yeah.
Not really, because they're not going anywhere. And this is one of the issues with Quest Priest is, as we said, you don't actually have a way to win the game.
Right.
You just, like, hope not to lose it.
Right.
And Hunter can just, especially, you know, we saw the Rexar snap pick that you said early on from the tracking. The Rexar was coined out, and then it's just go, 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 go. As bigger minions, as many minions as possible. And now, the poison charge was just the pinnacle of picks here, along with stealth. Literally one of the best beasts I think you can even create, especially in this scenario.
Psychic Scream number 2, or actually number 1. It was actually just fished out from the Shadow Visions anyway, off the top here. I was going to say, lethal was the wrong word to use. What I meant is, like, this is just game with the board state that gets generated with Tundra Rhinos, but that Psychic Scream very much changes that. But is it still just an uphill battle towards inevitability here? Because not only are there now so many stealth Tundra Rhinos in that deck, not only can New Zealand pretty much take one of them on demand here, but they also have a seemingly never-ending supply of Tundra Rhinos inside their builder beast.
It's just a factory at this point. It's just Mecha Rhino being ready for the coming out of Boom Laboratories. And yeah, I maybe Benedictus, and it's just Rhino on Rhino action at this point.
This beast will not be tamed.
Yep.
More poison. I want me some of them.
Those 8-mana stealth Rhino things seem pretty useful. Can I have a deck full of those, please? Why, yes. Yes, you may, sir.
But there isn't the in-hand procs for Zuka. That's the big difference here. The cubes, mainly to just keep these minions cooking and making even more, as the charge is just such a big deal.
Did miss what was picked first. Ooh, Razormaw, beautiful. Some Wind Fury options, get some more poisonous options as well, because there's still quite a few big minions that they're going to have to chew through. Oh, and it's Echo Rush. It was the Mastiff originally. Now that's Wind Fury. There's a second adapt here, plus attack is an enormous amount of damage. And Portugal are out of Amara. They were forced to play it before the Zola could be picked up. And that was just 24 damage even with the double 11 and the 2. Wow, Wind Fury plus attack, trade your beasts, buff it up, net the damage, spotted the lethal, executed the lethal, and mercifully brought an end to that series.
I will say, I don't think I've ever seen a chaining of as powerful zombies as Mage can make. Those were consistently Echo Rush with the Razormaw. Incredible beast. The Tundra Rhino with stealth and poison. Yeah, incredible
consistent
beast.
Poison, consistent stealth. They got an Iron Beak Owl, which they never even ended up using, which again is just another great utility to have. They had the adapt options all the time, which they passed up because they had better choices. They got Echo Rush all the time, which they ended up passing a lot.
I play a lot of Hunter, and I've never seen a chain of zombie offerings like that. That was absolutely insane. Let's take a review on that matchup, because you may have forgotten what Game 1 even looked like. It was the Rogue Mirror.
I've forgotten what my wife looks like.
Some people would say sat next to yourself, so I'm sure we'll get the answers on that one. But that is the shape of this series. It was one of the most mind-blowing series I've ever cast, and I've been doing this for a fair few years right now. Words, Sol?
Rogue Mirror, this could have been over. This could have been 3-0 to New Zealand if they'd have held South Sea Deckhand in hand and not played it on turn 1. Right. I'm not saying they would have won, but they definitely wouldn't have got blown out by the absolute massacre that they had done.
They literally lost to that turn 3 play.
If they held on to a South Sea Deckhand, which could have meant a 3-0, and in an alternate timeline, somewhere in a happier place, no one had to watch that Shudderwock versus Mage game.
Portugal were probably pretty happy with it in the end.
Yeah, fair enough.
That's all I got. It was, I will say, life is about experiences, and that was an experience is the way I'm going to describe that game. The Shudderwock game was honestly one of maybe the most ludicrous game of Hearthstone I've ever seen. And we've been aware of, we've been involved in this game for quite a few years. We've seen a lot of crazy games. But anyway, it's enough of that. Let's interview someone from the winning team, because we've all got questions at this point. Hello, Pacha.
Oh, you're on my computer speakers. All right. Hello.
I'm sorry.
We're everywhere. Don't worry. It's fine.
Yeah, it's the least we can do. Okay. There's a lot to talk about in that series. I'm sure everyone's emotional right now. But
yes.
What was it like? Yeah, just what? On comms, what was the last half of that shoulda what game like for you guys?
Well, we had 3 bounces, 2 Zolas, and a Grumble. And I feel like I don't even know how many times we whiffed. But then Mage was like, okay, we can still win this if we just high roll on the Lightning Storm. And we planned it all out. And then we just low rolled on the Lightning Storm. We're like, oh my goodness, this game is really not for us.
It was an experience for all of us, at least, as that game was absolutely crazy. But I will say, taking a step back a little bit, you obviously were on the team last year, and you said you kind of organized the preparation and the practice for the team. Have you taken a similar role again this year? Have you sort of just said, right, guys, this is when we need to do what we need to do, and just kind of keep control of the team?
Right. So, like, the captain doesn't mean you're, like, the strongest player on the team. It's just for me and our team, we're just trying to keep everyone organized, and it's more about talking to the admins and making sure we're there on time and things like that.
Okay.
After the Shutterwalk Mage game happened, when you looked at what the last matchup was, and it was, your Death Rattle Hunter versus Quest Priest, was that a relief for you because it's a good matchup, or was it? Were you just scared of like playing another marathon, like 20-minute game against Quest Priest potentially?
Well, we know the full lineup before game 1, and we knew that all our matchups were good, actually, except for the Rogue, because even though it was a mirror, they had Tar Creepers, and we did not have Tar Creeper.
Okay.
So, it was that the Rogue was our worst matchup, really, the Rogue mirror.
Okay, and how was communication for your team? Because again, like you and a couple of the other guys have a lot of experience from last year. Is that something you've worked on and improved on for this event?
So far, like the New Zealand guys are really chill, and they're just really easy to work with. It's a lot of fun, and yeah, like Ting Tong and I were on the same team last year. Yeah. It's just funny hearing them with their New Zealand accents. I'm the only one without a New Zealand accent.
At least you're having fun in other ways as well. So, but I won't keep you any longer. I know you've just had a very long series, so go and celebrate with the team. And congratulations again, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Okay, high spirits for Team New Zealand. Can't blame them. They did take the win, but I think there was even understanding on that side where like, yeah, we think we got this, even though this game's gone very, very, very sideways at this point.
Right.
But let's just take a quick review on some of the games that have come out right now.
Yeah, this was game number 1. It was a much slower development of Paladin than we were used to seeing in the previous series from yesterday. Went all-out aggressive. This was a much slower grind, and honestly, it was just a much faster start for Mage. On the Mage, got the Raven into the Stonehill Defender, which picked up a Tar Creeper, and pretty much from that point onwards, game number 2 was locked up, and Mage were able to equalize. This was the moment now where even after Blood Reaver Gul'dan came down, clearing out this initial board state, it still felt like maybe Portugal had enough to get over the line if it wasn't for that Savage Roar getting burned off the top, because this Godfrey was the last desperation, and then suddenly if there was enough refill to threaten lethal one more time, that Hellfire, which was only drawn at the last minute, would have been very necessary to stop Portugal running away from it. And then this, Raven.
Yeah, I struggle to have words. I feel like I need to, should need one, I don't even know at this point, to watch this one all over again. Maybe even in slow-mo, to work out that there were so many turns and so many choices. I feel like there must have been something that could have changed that and made that as shored up as we thought it would be.
Yeah, and this is a turn that needs clarifying as well, because you were talking about, the use of crushing hands. I think, honestly, from New Zealand's side, they were trying to avoid using Crushing Hands under any circumstance on this turn. You asked the questions whether it was worth to Crushing Hands at any point before Volcano, which answer, yes, it does take more health off the board if you do that, but if they'd have overloaded for 6, they then wouldn't have been able, for example, like Crushing Hands of Baron-Geddon on the following turn, and that becomes a huge problem. But yeah, that game was madness. This game would have been by far the craziest game of any series you've watched if it wasn't for the fact that this series had that Mage versus Shudderwock game in it, because that was just an infinite loop of Tundra Rhinos as far as the eye could see, and then a super cute lethal at the end with a double echoed adapt from a Crackling Razormaw onto a Built-A-Beast Scavenging Hyena, which was then buffed up even further by trading off more beasts to cash in on the Wind Fury damage and pick up lethal. So yeah, top to bottom, pretty crazy series. I think we saw, you know, some great play winning people games. We saw some bad play losing people games. We saw some ridiculous rolls of the dice ending up costing people, and then people scrambling to try and find a win condition to compensate from that. And then at the end, we just saw a matchup that was, I think, just too powerful for the Priest to overcome.